Good evening, and welcome back from the summer. Hope you all had a great summer. I know I did, but I'm also glad to be back here. So let's begin. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
This is the September 6th Village Council work session. Deputy Mayor Perrin. Here. Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here. Councilmember
Winograd.
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos.
Here. Let's all join in for the salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's go right to public comment.
Please state your name and address, and it's limited to 3 minutes per person.
Jackie, it's not on.
Turn on the microphone.
Jacqueline, Home 30 Carriage Lane. I see on the agenda tonight, that there's a award contract for historic consultant. I've sent several emails with issues relating to that contractor, and I wanted to ask that this evening those points be discussed. In particular, the taxpayer identification number that was provided, that was then changed, and not matching the business certificate. So there was a discrepancy between the first documents and then again this time. So what was, if we can get to the bottom of answering my questions in the email, one being the EIN numbers not matching and the business certificate being different and not matching the taxpayer's information. And then the second one was related to the archaeological survey for Shedler. In both cases, if we could just be told how the contractors are being found, who found them, who's vetting them, at what point does the public get to see their credentials, and how is that information being vetted and selected, who recommended this contractor as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Welcome back. Denise Lima, 319 East Glen Ave. I'll start also with the contractor, and I did send an email on July 19th regarding the contractor's information that was provided on the resume with actual feedback from the people that he claimed he was integrated with, saying that there was no conversations. So really smart, informative people like the mayor of Bethlehem, New Jersey, the Montclair Planning Board, the financial sponsors of the Taylor Bliss Historical House, Flavia Aleavia, who's a professor at Ramapo College, and denounced any information and workings with the contractor. And I provided all of those third-party texts and messages. So I have not received any information back. Is anybody exploring his details, his resume? There's missing information about education and certificates that are needed for this project. I don't know why we keep going forward without the right due diligence. The second thing that I had some time, and I actually went back to the 2021 election debate that was held by the League of Women Voters, and there was some interesting feedback and comments from, at the time, Mr. Vagianos in response to a few topics. One was the town garage. I've been watching this for 25 years, and we don't plan well. We don't seek out the advice from the people that can guide them. Let me be clear, I love parks and I love trees. We should have more parks and more trees. So I don't know that we're necessarily seeking out all the right people and planning well for Shedler. Climate. If I'm elected, trees will take a priority, and there will be a line item that is robust in the budget for trees. I think there's a holistic approach. We need better zoning to reduce the elimination of impervious surfaces. That's why there is so much flooding. In the topic that was raised about artificial turf and flooding, after Sandy, Chris Christie said that this is the third 100-year flood this year. We are in a flood zone, and Saddle River floods, and every time we need to fix the turf fields. We need to adapt. We need to change. We need to have to go back to grass. It will be more costly, but it is a no-brainer. So I don't know why we keep going down the path of turf. I think of those as being elected promises and campaign promises, and have an impact on the Shedler property. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Good evening, Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I have a question about portable toilets. When people are doing construction, there are ordinances related to where they can put the dumpster, like the setback from the street and whatnot, and where they can put those pods, the portable on-demand storage or whatever. But I learned from the building department this week that they can put the portable potties anywhere they want to. And I was wondering if you might consider writing something about that, because some construction projects go on really long, and sometimes the portable potties are right on the property line of somebody who's not doing the construction, and they smell and so on. And I thought maybe, the homeowner might have a little bit more responsibility if there were an ordinance to have the portable potties placed on some kind of setback like the dumpsters and the PODs are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment. And, excuse me, didn't see him. Carolyn from online, you're on mute.
Hi, this is Carolyn Holt, 249 Mountain Avenue. I called in tonight because I wanted to express my support for the Village Council's initiative to put a full-size turf field on the Shedler property. I appreciate that you listened to me and many residents about the shortage of fields in our town and the opportunity that the village has with the Shedler property to add a full-size field, which is not in a flood zone. I mentioned in an earlier Village Council meeting that I spoke at that I've lived in the town for 20 years. We have 3 children. For anyone who goes to practices or games on the town's fields, they're just not in great condition. And I did some research and determined that it's really because of overuse. And so having the opportunity to put another field that could get a lot of great use and maximizing that space is a great idea. And I'm glad that you guys have been thoroughly looking into it and have come up with what seems to be a good compromise that will benefit many more residents than the initial plan that you were handed when you first started considering this. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I'll look forward to see where we come out on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'm now going to close public comment, and we will move on to the village manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. First, I just want to announce that we had a very successful first day of school yesterday. Had the opportunity to
Is your microphone on?
It is.
Okay, could you
I'll
speak
get
into
closer.
Thank you, thank you.
Had the opportunity to arrive here early yesterday and travel the village with Chief Lyons. Very pleased at the job the police department did with trying to handle traffic in and around our schools. And there were an incredible amount of families walking to school for the first day. And I want to commend our entire crossing guard team who were out there making sure that everyone arrived at school safely. In conjunction with that, we worked diligently during the months of July and August to conclude our road resurfacing program. We only had 3 streets that ran into this week, Dayton, Highland, and Latte. And we will be winding down our road resurfacing efforts as we move into the fall. I want to commend Rich Calby from our water department and his entire team. I want to thank Congressman Gottheimer for being at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Ravine PFAS treatment plant on Goffel Road. This is a long time coming, and this is one of many groundbreakings that we will see here in the village of Ridgewood as we work diligently to treat the PFAS issue that we are challenged with. On September 18th at 7 p.m. here in the courtroom, we'll hold the Meet the Manager session. I invite all residents who would like to come, learn a little bit about me and my experience, and also talk about their ideas, concerns, and thoughts about the future of the village of Ridgewood to join us that night so that we can have a hearty discussion. I want to thank the folks at Ridgewood Talks. I was able to be interviewed last week on their podcast to talk a little bit more about my arrival here and what we've been able to accomplish over the last 7 or 8 weeks. So I want to thank Gene and Jordan for inviting me to participate in that. One of our major work efforts right now is the Joint Insurance Fund renewal. Our various department directors are reviewing all of our current infrastructure to assign value to that so that we have an updated JIF renewal policy, and we expect that to be submitted by mid-September. Also had an opportunity this week to meet with the Committee from Aging in Place, learn more about our senior community, what current services are being provided to them, and what we would want to plan for in the future. A few announcements. During the month of September, all residents are invited to view the Portraits exhibit as we honor the memories of Ridgewood's friends and neighbors in reflection of 9/11. This exhibit includes photos and narrative statements, and it is conducted over at the public library. The Ridgewood Chamber of Commerce will be hosting their 28th annual car show in the Central Business District this Friday night at 6 p.m., weather permitting. And on Saturday, September 9th, the Ridgewood Guild is sponsoring their annual Music Fest in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square. Bergen County Utilities Authority will be conducting a hazardous waste collection day on Saturday, September 9th from 9 to 3 at Bergen County Campground Reservation in Mahwah. Those residents who need to participate in that should bring an identification. No commercial vehicles are allowed. And for more information, you can go to bcua.org. The Ridgewood Parks and Recreation Department is presenting Alzheimer's Gardens Designed for Healing with Jeff Rosenfeld, an environmental and assistant professor at Parsons School of Design. We encourage everybody to participate in that presentation on Tuesday, September 26th from 11 to 12. And lastly, the next council chat with our village council members will be held on Saturday, October 7th from 9 to 11 here in the Village Hall courtroom. If anyone would like to make a reservation, the number is 201-670-5500, extension 2207. Walk-ins are welcome. However, we recommend folks make reservations to have priority. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Keith. And then we'll go to council reports. I'm not sure how busy that's been since the summer. I'll start with Evan. Anything?
No, none of my committees met in last week's August. Good to be back, though, and looking forward to a really productive second half of the year.
Great. Siobhan?
Sure. So I have quite a few updates, sorry. So I want to begin and remind everybody that Access Weekend is coming up, and Access Weekend will be held in Ridgewood on the weekend of October 6th, 7th, and 8th with a series of events promoting and spotlighting our disabled community. All the events are listed on the website, and I would encourage everybody to attend at least one of them. They're not to be just, they're really amazing events, and it's such a great weekend. And if you can't be there and you'd like to donate your time, talent, or treasure in another way, we are looking for any and all help. You can just reach out to us on the address on the website. I also want to say that the Communications Committee will have an update on tonight's agenda, but in addition to the new website, we are still actively seeking photographs from people within the community. So if you have any pictures that you think display Ridgewood, whether it's winter, summer, spring, fall, we're looking for them. You can submit them to the photos address, and we're asking that they be high resolution and your unique vantage point. No people, just places and wonderful moments that you can, if people are visible and you can't tell who they are, we may let them in. So Shade Tree and Mulch Monday and Adopt a Sapling has been very busy. So over the summer and just recently, the last week in August, a group of us got together to continue the weeding and maintaining of our tree wells and our sidewalks. And I want to say thank you to Deputy Mayor Pam Perrin, who showed up and weeded, our village manager, Keith, the students at Ridgewood High School, members of Newcomers.
Siobhan, could you speak more
Sure.
into the mic? I see some people having a little trouble hearing.
Sure. So 3 things that continue to evolve in this,
Stay
and
close.
we're going to talk about it at the council meetings in further steps. We're reliant heavily on volunteerism. I know that Lorraine has struggled with Project Pride. We've struggled with some of the weeding. And while we're grateful for all of our volunteers, we want to look at how much we're relying on volunteerism. We've had some really good discussions with the village manager about the second point, which is enforcement. And lastly, there's just the harsh reality that the vacancies present a different problem altogether in terms of tree well maintenance and weeding. So stay tuned for more on that. I'd be remiss because I see some orchard people here. We have launched Adopt a Sapling, and Adopt a Sapling is a more sustainable approach economically and environmentally to promoting our tree canopy through our street trees. So if you live in the orchard area and you are willing to sign our adoption form, you can have a tree planted for you by volunteers in the right-of-way. And it's really simple. You just have to keep the tree hydrated and report back to it. The number 1 cause of death to a tree in Ridgewood, New Jersey is lack of watering, so we are asking people to proactively say they're going to do that. Also in August, the village manager and I met with Hub Quarters, and Hub Quarters shares existing and underutilized space in a way that generates value for remote workers, local businesses, and greater communities. We have a local mom and rep working here, and she and her company want us to look at exploring non-traditional uses of traditional space. It was an interesting discussion because in addition to, offering something for CBDAC in the downtown, we, the village of Ridgewood, have some underutilized space, and they may be successful at helping us find out better ways to use some of our space, such as the taxi stand or even possibly the Shedler House. They will be coming onto the agenda later in October, just as an idea generation. And then lastly, over the past 2 weeks, we've assembled some meetings with some eco-friendly turf. So one of the things that was surprising when I took my seat is that outside of Shedler, we've had 5 serious floods here, and we, the village, own Maple, and RHS and the Stevens have turf as well. And we haven't really explored any eco-friendly turf. So because I'm the Parks rep, I put together some meetings. The 2 vendors that we met with, I invited Deputy Mayor Pam Perrin. We're still friends, even though she did not vote for turf, and we learned a lot. I have a lot of samples that I want to put out. Again, we have samples of Field Play and Cool Play and Shaw's products, and I can talk more about that, but I did want to disclose that those meetings were going on. We are looking to bring in possibly 1 more vendor based upon, feedback that we get from tonight. So after this is over, before we begin the Shedler presentation, I'm going to put all the samples out here because these are official documents. Just don't take them. They're marketing materials, and I will be talking a lot more about what we learned, but I did want to say thank you to Pam, Matt Rogers, and Keith for attending it. It was very interesting. We learned a lot about the marketplace, and there'll be more to come during the Shedler discussion.
Thanks, Siobhan. Lorraine?
Thank you. Our first CSAC meeting will be Thursday, September 21st. So if anybody has any safety issues or concerns, you can come to the meeting. It's downstairs in the garden room starting at 7:30. Project Pride, as Siobhan said, we're always looking for volunteers. This year we're going to try and do something new, and instead of just taking the old spent summer flowers out and leaving the pots empty all year. We are hoping to put in some mums and cabbage and some fall foliage on the same day. Remove the old, put in some mums. We are looking to do it on Sunday, September 24th. We usually start about 7:30 in the morning, take about 3 hours. If anybody wants to volunteer, please email me. We would love to have you. And based on the number of volunteers I get, you know, hopefully this is gonna happen, but no guarantees. Cash Rochelle, I just wanted to give a shout out to Gail McCarthy, the chairman of the Cash Rochelle Committee. It was another fabulous summer. Terrific bands. Unfortunately, the last day was rained out, the Nerds, but Gail was able to get them to come back on October 4th. It is a Wednesday night. We will all be here, unfortunately. Maybe we can open the windows and hear them, and hopefully we can have a short meeting and then go see the Nerds. So that's October 4th, Wednesday, the Nerds. I'm not sure the time, probably 7:30, I'm guessing, but I'll follow up on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Pam?
Sure. Destination Ridgewood is coming back after the Labor Day break. On Saturday the 9th, we have Tai Chi at 8 a.m. in Van Ness Square. 10 a.m., Artists and Crafts for kids. That's going to be a Van Gogh-themed activity. And at 11 a.m., we have Book Nook, and all of these are in Van Ness Square. And at 1 p.m., the Ridgewood Guild's Music Fest starts, and that goes till 9 p.m. On Sunday morning, we will have yoga at 8 a.m., and that's by Flow Yoga. CBDAC is going to meet on the 14th, downstairs at 8:30 a.m. That's the Central Business District Advisory Committee. You're welcome to join us and learn about the Central Business District Committee. Green Ridgewood meets also on the 14th, and that's at 7:30 p.m. in the same room. Green Ridgewood is holding a panel discussion about potential leaf blower regulation. We came up with a proposed ordinance, vetted it through the Parks Department, and sent it around to all the local landscapers that we could identify, and also to the State Trade Association, and we've gotten a lot of comments back. At this panel discussion, we will have 4 speakers, a pulmonologist, a council person from a town that has banned gas-powered leaf blowers, and a landscaper who uses a battery-powered equipment, and Frank Mortimer, who is our master beekeeper in town. I also wanted to tell you that according to what Rich Calby told me this afternoon, all 4 towns of Ridgewood Water are now agreeing to water 2 days a week. And this regulation has been, in the offing. We've been begging them to do this for years, and the other 3 towns have finally all agreed. So that's really wonderful. Thanks for all your work on that, Rich. The Planning Board met on August 15th, and Ridgewood Water made an application to build a PFAS treatment facility at its existing treatment facility on Cedarcroft Road. That's their West End treatment facility. Their proposal is to build a new building in front of the old building with facing that integrates both of them. These would be, there would be 2 tanks of resin medium to remediate the PFAS. The Planning Board voted to recommend approval, and that will be coming in front to the council. We also discussed the state-mandated ordinance, which came here before, on the storage of de-icing material. There are no known problems in our village with regard to this, but as I say, it's state-mandated. And the Planning Board voted to recommend that for approval to the Village Council. It is on our agenda tonight, various amendments to the land use ordinance, and the zoning board asked for a series of amendments to make their process clearer for the zoning officer and for people who come before them as applicants. And the planning board did resolve to recommend these changes to the council, but paying close attention to the language for circular driveways. Planning board also met last night. We had a minor application from the owner of 20 Corsa Terrace for a C variation to build a deck, and the planning board granted that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Pam. And none of my committees met in the last 3 weeks, which was really a good idea. and we appreciate that. And so now we will move on to our regular agenda. Keith.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I'm going to ask to pull item 8A, which is the review of the 2024 capital budget. Mr. Rooney and I are awaiting some revised numbers from 2 departments, and I'd like to present a comprehensive report to the council at the meeting on September 27th. With that, at this time, I'd actually like to call Bob Rooney up. With the council's permission, I'd like to move to item 9B on the agenda, which is our 2 items under parking. Bob has a commitment after this meeting that I'd like him to be able to keep, so if we could jump to that, and then we will circle back to the 2 presentations listed under item 8. So again, we're moving to item 9B1. 9B1. And the first are the 2024 recommended parking permit pricing levels. So Bob, I will turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Keith. Every year we present to council.
Bob, if you could speak into the mic a little better. Thank you.
I have to get a longer mic.
I understand.
Every year we present to council consideration for parking rate increases. If you recall, many years ago, we've asked Walker Consultants to take a look at our rate structure and project when we would need rate increases for both metered parking and permit parking. So the last report that they did was back in December of 21, at which time they suggested a rate increase effective in 2024 of 25 cents per hour for both on-street and lot parking. In addition, they recommended an increase in the permit parking rates, as well as the, well, let's just go with the permit parking rates. So I reviewed where we stand with our revenue stream for parking, and it's a little early to determine whether we need that 25-cent increase for 2024. Our revenue stream right now is doing very well. We're at about 75% of what we anticipate for the year. So I'd like to hold off on any suggestions for that change. However, I would like to propose the increase be adopted for the permit parking. One, because, and again, it's an average of about 3% increase, but doing this early gives us time to get all the tags printed, get everything out, get everything in order, allow the public to purchase those permits earlier rather than rushing around the last 2 weeks of the year trying to get everything in order. So with that, I've provided you with a schedule of what the proposed increases would be for your consideration, and leave it open for any questions.
Questions?
Why are we not increasing for motorcycles when we're increasing for everybody else?
I think the motorcycles were fairly new for the past year. I think last year might have been the first year we did it. So again, we don't have many usage. I think we have 1 or 2 up there. So I just felt leaving it flat would be okay at this time.
have you given thought to a permit for 3 days a week, since so many people are commuting 3 days a week rather than 5? Or would we be undercutting ourselves?
So we looked into this last year. Matter of fact, it's probably a little longer than that. When we were coming out of COVID, we were looking because people weren't just going into the city. The structure would be to enforce would be very difficult. 2 is there are not many schools, colleges, whatever, that utilize that function. So it'd be an upgrade, and it'd take a lot of time and effort to try and put that in place. And to your point, yes, we would be cutting ourselves short on the revenue stream.
Bob, I don't really know if this is a question for you, but we got an email this week about the daily rate, and they're not able to use Park Mobile any longer. Is that true, or that was?
I actually have a meeting tomorrow to reconcile that.
Okay.
And I've had a couple of people call me, and I've explained to them that we're on hold till tomorrow once we get through the process, but I'm aware of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So to add to that, one of the feedback that we got later tonight was that many homes are now without printers. So that is a constraint. If people are buying the daily rate, they can't print the pass out, and that's, some people legit don't have them, and it's not the most sustainable approach to be printing the paper all the time. So that was the added concern that came in tonight.
Understood. The way I did not have a conversation today, but it's my understanding that when someone pays through Park Mobile, whether it be the click-in for the ticket or normally it goes into our system and the PEOs are aware that they don't have to be, they've paid. I think that the printout was just a function of us not having a permit, a hang tag, or anything else that went with it. So that's what we did in the past, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be okay with just entering that information to Park Mobile, and they'll get recognition for it.
Bob, how are our permits selling? Have they been consistent since we first opened the garage?
Yeah, we've been very consistent with our sales. I mean, now that people are going back to work.
Sure. Good. Good. And I just want to note that the increases are modest, $50, $60 over for a $1,500 tag.
Correct. I think it's a very good deal.
It's reasonable. Good. Anybody else?
When do we need to make a call? I'm sorry. When do we need to make a call on the hourly, potentially hourly raise?
So probably November-ish.
Okay.
I'll be in a better position to see if that's needed. But if things are continuing the way they are, I think we'll be okay for 24.
Good. Everyone good with this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mayor, the second issue is a memorandum from Chief Lyons with regard to some language that the department is requesting relative to the ordinance for overtime parking prohibited. Bob left, but this is an enforcement issue where our municipal court is currently obligated to find someone not guilty, and dismissing an overtime parking ticket becomes problematic from the court's operational standpoint. So, Bob, I don't know if you want to shed some additional light on this. I know this is an issue you've been dealing with since before I arrived here.
Yeah, I think conversations with our law enforcement have suggested that we move in this path, because I know the judge gets challenged several times based upon the excuses or the rationale that people have as to why they got a ticket, why they didn't get a ticket, and I think that trying to clarify this puts it in a better light.
Well, this would appear to be a good cleanup provision and something that should have been in place for a long time. And I commend Chief Lyons for finding it, addressing it, and I'm gathering from the looks here. Everyone good with this?
Well, will the person still have to go before the judge, or can a ticket be dismissed at the window?
That I don't know.
That's That's an administrative aspect that I don't think we have authority over.
Great.
So,
What this is going to allow is an officer who can verify that the person paid to be found not guilty. That's the long and the short of it.
Yeah, if, to Pam's point, if there was some way, because again, errors occur, and when you come to court, for anyone who has been fortunate enough to come to court, it's a multi-hour ordeal for someone to maintain that they have already paid and shouldn't get a $25 ticket. For many, it is just simpler to pay the ticket.
And maybe the result of a technology error as well. So
Exactly.
but it may be available depending upon which way the court clerk wants to go, but we don't have authority to dictate that dismissal or that opportunity to do that. So it may be available to them once this goes into place.
Is it, I was going to say, but then is it, I mean, is it possible that, that our village manager or village council could have a conversation with the court administrator to ask?
Oh, I mean, you can ask anytime.
Well, that's all I'm looking for here. So that
You
so
can
that
ask about it.
Yeah.
And I know that the municipal court process does allow for certain tickets, certain charges to be dismissed without an appearance, and depending upon how that works. So that is strictly covered by the administrative office of the courts. It's not under our purview. And but certainly, if you wanted to ask and see if they could utilize that in this instance, once we change this, that's certainly an option we can make use of.
That would be great. If one of you guys could follow up on that, that would be terrific, because I know that I get more than a fair amount of letters from people who have to come to court for something that should ultimately be dismissed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Circling back to item 8B, update on the West Glen Avenue sidewalk project. Very pleased that we had a good turnout at the resident meeting back on August 17th. I want to thank Councilwoman Reynolds and Mayor Vagianos for being present at that meeting, along with our engineering staff and our village clerk, Heather Maylander. That meeting resulted in a good discussion with residents about where the walls, as they've come to be known in our many discussions on this topic, would be absolutely necessary, and where grading could be done in order to establish the transition between the property owner's property and the sidewalk area. Engineering is currently in the process of revising those plans and revising those specifications so that they can come up with an accurate cost estimate for this project, and we will be bringing that back to the village council as soon as it's complete.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Chris, for your work on this. Really appreciate it.
And that brings us to item 8C, which I'd like to invite Chris Rudishauser, our village engineer, forward to talk about where we are on the current proposal for the Shedler property. Chris?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Up before you on the screens, and I think you have printouts in your hands, is the latest concept plan for Shedler. This plan has been worked extensively by Yova Mahenzik, our designer, and Peter Primavera, our consultant. The intent is to produce a field design that we hope will SHPO, or State Historic Preservation Office, will find acceptable. What we have there is we have a multi-purpose lacrosse soccer field, and in the upper northeast corner there's a 40-60 baseball diamond overlaid on it also. We provide for parking on the campus of the field. We have a bathroom and adverse weather shelter area in the upper northwest corner, right near the playground. Playground is that tan oval, as you see. We try to preserve some of the tree cover that is on the property. Some of those areas could be seen as designated undisturbed wooded area. An example of that is on the right side of the drawing on the very northern property. We have a sidewalk circumventing the entire park. It is 8 feet wide. The reason we go for an 8-foot width is that is a width that we can plow with our pickups. We have found that the 8-foot width sidewalk we have in the Habernickel Park that we plow in the winter is very popular with people wanting to go for a walk, particularly if the roads are very snowy. We provide for screening with the house. Mr. Primavera has been instrumental in guiding us on the level of screening and how to keep the house or propose the area around the house in the least intrusive manner in the eyes of State Historic Preservation Office. For stormwater management, we'll be utilizing rain gardens. Rain gardens, for those who are not familiar, will be a slightly excavated area that surface water runoff will flow into. Usually it's planted with a number of flowers and vegetation that happens to like that rainwater. We have rain gardens in a number of areas already in the village. There's one up at Habernickel. We have one over here in the Greater North parking lot. Sometimes when they're blooming, they look great. Sometimes less so. If there's any questions you folks have or clarifications you'd like, I'll be happy to try my best.
Questions?
I have a couple of basic ones. So I see that we changed the design of the parking lot. So a couple questions on that. First of all, there will be enough space for 2 cars? I'm thinking if a car's coming in and a car's coming out, will that fit, or are they going to be facing each other?
The in and out is 2 12-foot wide lanes, or 24 feet overall. 12 foot is a standard MUTCD lane. Ample room for cars to pass one another.
And if somebody's parking...
Excuse me, Evan, if you could speak into the mic. I know some of our audience
I
members...
probably have to eat it to
I
hear
know.
it. I know.
You got to get close to it.
Yeah, I know. All right. So additionally, I'm just noticing we only have 7 spots that are right near the house. If folks do park for the house at the larger lot, is there going to be an easy walkway for them to get without going back into that roadway?
We have not designated a walkway because from the guidance we've gotten from Mr. Primavera is to minimize that. There is going to be a field there. People can walk across the field. They can walk around the field. That ability is always going to be there.
Okay. And is there going to be any separation between the larger parking lot and the field? I'm just thinking, are you going to have like a car literally parked right next to the field without any sort of fence or anything there? Is there going to be any, like, are we thinking like a small fence or something that would be between where the car would park and where the field would be?
If that is a concern, we could put up a timber guide rail. We have done that in other locations. A perfect example here is at the Village Hall parking lot. As you leave and you make the left-hand turn, if you look straight, you'll see there's a timber railing set in front of the playground. That was by design when we designed this place. That's in case somebody can't navigate the turn satisfactorily. We anticipate that guide rail will hang up their car before it'll negatively impact on the playground.
Okay.
We can consider doing that.
And then finally, how many parking spots? I see we got 27 in the 2 lots. How many along Saddle River Road are we going to be able to get in over there? Is that it? 18?
I believe it's 18 for the parallel parking on West Saddle River Road.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. So in the previous drawing, I'm not positive, but were there 40 spaces in the parking lot? Or 32, was it?
We've had so many drawings. We've had drawings with more parking spaces. Right now, this is what we're working with.
Okay. But it was definitely more, right? It's a small.
I believe we may have had drawings that had greater parking. This is a proposal that, again, we feel gives the parking or provides the parking the field needs while not annoying SHPO too much in terms of what they look for.
Okay. With the handicap parking, the parking near the house being so far away from the house, is that a concern for SHPO? For handicap?
No, actually, SHPO would probably prefer no parking there at all.
Okay.
However, the village did get funding from Bergen County Community Block Development Grant to construct the ADA accessible ramp that is on the west side of the house. The ramp's been constructed. We now have to put a parking lot to it. Again, working with Mr. Primavera, the recommendation was to move the parking as far away from the house as possible. And that's about as far away as we can get. We do also have parking along the street that people can utilize if they're coming to see the house.
I don't really see, is the sugar maple still there? Is that the little circle that says 48? Is that the sugar maple?
The sugar maple is up at the northwest corner of the house. It is still there. It is still standing to the best of my knowledge. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
That is, we are planning on preserving it.
Okay. I do see where it says proposed parking lot lighting. What I was always told that there would be no lighting.
We're having parking lighting in the parking lot. That would be the typical village downcast lighting or the shoebox fixtures that we have that you do not see the direct source of the illumination. There's several along that roadway and in the parking lot in the back.
But, I mean, I thought we always talked there'd be no lighting.
That conversation, if I recall, was regarding the field.
Okay. Why would you need lighting on the parking lot if there's no lighting on the field and there's not going to be any play? And nobody should be in the park after dark.
But you still have people who go in.
That would be a nice idea, but it doesn't happen that way.
Well, you put gates up and, you know.
Okay. How would you like us to manage the gates?
I don't know. Or most parks, like the duck pond, that closes every day at dusk, and they put gates up, right?
That I don't know. That's Bergen County's operation, not ours.
We
None of our parks have gates to close them off.
We don't have any gates, and we do have, from Habernickel, we do have problems, and, you know, the police, I mean, we have problems in our parks that are, and if they were completely dark, I'd imagine we'd have more problems.
How tall are these lights? Are they, 20 feet tall, or are they just 4 feet tall?
They're about 14 feet tall usually.
14?
Yes.
So with this current plan, do you know how many trees would be removed?
To that point, the deputy mayor had asked the assistant engineer to take an inventory. He took an inventory. She had asked for 8-inch trees. He measured all 6-inch diameter trees. We anticipate, with the design you're looking at there, about 186 trees to be removed and about 114 trees to be saved. He located a total of 300 trees. If you want to see how that looks on a sketch, I had 11 by 17 of his downloaded survey effort.
So the only trees that are going to be saved are as you're entering West Saddle River Road, the area to your left, and then there'll be the entrance, and then a little area to the right of the entrance.
Yeah, there's an area for the entrance road. There's an area both on the left, as you said, and on the right side that also is undisturbed. Around the house in itself, we're proposing what is called a no-mow meadow. We feel is maybe more in keeping with the historic nature of the house.
What is a no-mow meadow? You
We
just
don't cut
never
the
mow
grass.
it?
We plant grasses. There's certain species that are recommended. It may look a little more unkempt than, say, Vets Field.
Okay. And then a little patch of trees all the way at the other end. All the other trees will be gone.
Not all of them.
Well, 186 of them.
Yes, that's what we counted.
And is there any, with the berm, is this the current berm that's there? Is that what you're showing, or has it changed at all?
That's the berm that's already been built and has already been planted with trees. I'll grant you that some of those trees haven't survived, and we are working on getting those replaced.
But if they are replaced, don't we feel like they're going to just die again? Should we, just say we made a mistake and maybe
The
do
berm
something
area
else?
where the trees are planted is irrigated. That was part of the construction project.
Okay. So in your opinion, if we replace them, you don't think the new ones will die?
Some may, but I think we'll have some that will definitely survive.
Through you, Mayor, to Councilwoman Reynolds, that tree report or the email that delineated the numbers of the trees was sent to the entire council a little before 1 o'clock this afternoon, so you should have that in your email box for reference.
Thanks.
Through you, Mayor, to Councilwoman Reynolds.
Please.
The report on the number of trees as it was prepared by the assistant engineer was passed along to the council a little before 1 o'clock today by email. So you all have that in your email box for reference. And with regard to the replantings on the berm, that was a matter that we discussed at a previous meeting in executive session as reported by Mr. Rogers.
I have another tree question. I don't want to interrupt. You have more questions?
No, for now I'm done.
Good.
Where it says shade trees will be planted, can you give us an idea of what species that would be?
We're going to work with our arborist, Declan Madden. It's very difficult right now to pick a species, and the reason I say that is there's a number of illnesses that are striking various species. Everyone is familiar with EAP. However, there is also something that's affecting birch trees. Red oak trees are also getting affected by like a leaf scorch disease. So what I would do when it came time to select several species, not just one, because we don't want to put all our eggs on one type in case there is another illness coming our way.
Okay.
Most of the trees that you see along West Saddle River Road, up near the concession stand, bathroom area, those will be deciduous. I personally like red oaks, but as I said, red oaks are getting this scorch disease. We have had success in planting willow oaks. We planted them at the train station when we did the parking lot enlargement. I think they look nice. I hope everyone else thinks also. There are species that we've tried over the years that are thriving in the village. I would defer to Declan on his recommendations for those.
And when I went to visit these other artificial turf large fields, they had very high fences to keep the balls from hitting cars or whoever's outside the field. Would there be a fence here?
We're not yet envisioning a fence. That is something we're going to have to discuss with Parks and Rec, what their recommendations are.
Wouldn't SHPO need to know?
Again, I'm not sure, or if that's going to be something that we put in our application to SHPO.
Hang on a sec.
Chris, I see along West Saddle River Road there, along the length of the field, you have dogwoods alternating, white and pink, which I know will be gorgeous, but then in the fall, when the leaves fall until the spring, the neighbors have absolutely no protection from West Saddle River Road to Route 17 on that 330-foot length of field.
That area in front of along West Saddle River Road is an area we have to use trees that are low trees for under utility wires. We do have a pretty significant utility wire running along West Saddle River Road, so we're certainly not going to be able to plant any conifer that's going to grow. Anything we plant there is going to have to be on a short side.
I mean, that whole length right now is filled with trees. Is there any way to save the trees in that lower right-hand corner to give protection to the neighborhood?
You may want to go take a look at it. The utility company in the last several weeks has cleared a number of trees out from underneath those utility wires. They've cut that back.
I mean, I was there today. To me, it's all trees along that length. Unless you're saying, did the utility go into the property and cut trees?
Can the utility?
No, did they?
I don't believe they did. I think they trimmed the trees within their legal right.
I mean, because
As they've been doing.
it appeared pretty full to me when I passed it today.
They took out a number of trees along that area, along the strip, particularly from the corner with 510 heading south towards the Shedler house.
And what are there trees or bushes to the right of the house?
Those are probably going to be conifers. I don't want to commit to anything like green giants. I would prefer spruces, but we had selected spruces earlier for the berm, and we had to change that because there's an illness with the spruce trees.
But are you thinking something that's going to be 10 feet tall, or 20 feet, 30 feet, at maturity?
We don't want to get too tall. I know when we reviewed the site plans a long time ago with the police department, they would have preferred everything about maybe 5.5 feet or less, so that they can see over across the whole area of the park if and when they have to respond.
Okay.
Good.
If we are submitting to SHPO, I do think we need to figure out if there's going to need to be a high fence there. I think it's important for their assessment of the aesthetics and whether there's an encroachment.
Well, I'm making note of that.
There is a fence, just so everyone knows on the diagram, along the road.
Yeah, that's
just
42 inches. That's
right, yeah, it's 3 feet, right?
That's just to keep the soccer ball from going into the road, followed by a kid chasing it.
To the Deputy Mayor, probably the oldest age you're going to see on a 40 by 60 is around 10. So just keep their ability to hit the ball that far to the parking area or the roadway probably limited on a field of this dimension.
Okay.
Oh, I think a lot of 10-year-olds can hit it pretty far these days.
So,
Pam, do you have anything? Oh, sorry.
I was going to, I don't want to interrupt this. Anybody
I was
else?
gonna say, Pam, do you have anything else?
I think that's it.
No, Chris, I just want to thank you. I think this is the most detailed version we've seen yet. The detail's really appreciated. Listen, I'm not going to hide any punches. I really like this plan. I think this is a great nod to the history by the way the house is set back, and it's preserved, and it's a little kind of area there. It's separated from the field. We have the full-size field, which I think is so needed for our kids. I really like what you've done here in terms of reconfiguring the parking lot. I think this is a much more workable plan. And I think the parking here makes a lot of sense. I count 45 parking spots just for this field. I even like the fence design that you have in the little picture there. I would really urge that we get this done as soon as possible. I think this would be a great addition for our kids, and I'd really like to see this. I really want to see kids on this field really soon. But really well done, Chris. Really appreciate the work you put into this.
Thank you. Again, the next steps, according to the manager, will probably be submitting to SHPO shortly.
So as we proceed down the agenda, there are two proposals, one for an archaeological study and one to renew a second phase with Primavera LLC. So that'll be discussed as we proceed on tonight's agenda.
Siobhan?
Sure. So everyone's asked a lot of the questions, and I'm grateful that we got the plans early, so thank you. I think it looks excellent. I think we really, when we've been speaking with SHPO, preserving the integrity of the house, which we spent a serious amount of money, it's been achieved with buffering it with the trees. I think it's great. I love the fact that you used hardscaping for the accessibility for the handicap, because I know that there had been discussion of something loose. So I think that's really thoughtful on the house side. I also love that in addition to the field that you have a playground. I know we have many sports families who were watching and families in general. It's such a nice touch to have that there, and I'm still hoping we clear the diversion, but if we don't, maybe that playground can be added benefit if we can get it in there. And Lorraine, I think the soft touch of the beautiful trees on the street are lovely. I think, like I said, this is not as stark. It's pumped more with trees, which is good. And I think you addressed a lot of competing differences. And I think that, it's important to say that a lot of, because I'm on the Fields Committee and the Parks Committee, there are no play lights. There is no concession. There are no bleachers. And I think it's a nice compromise that hits a lot of things. And I'm really grateful for all the work that the engineering department did. I think it looks nice. And I think my only question is, how quickly can we get this up on the website now that we've talked about it tonight so the whole community can see it?
Sure, Dylan can place it tomorrow morning, if that's the council's desire.
Oh, one more thing, just to let you know, Councilwoman Winograd and I were in the house the other day, and the walls are closed, it's all painted, things are really nicely refurbished, very thoughtful touches, and the kitchen's in, bathroom fixtures are in, it's very nicely done.
And I totally respect that. I still would love to hear from folks around, especially in that area, what we're still going to do with the house. I know we don't really have a use for it yet, so I would welcome any ideas in terms of practical ideas as to what to do with the house, especially if we do what's here, which I think is just, I think is great.
I have a couple of questions, Chris. First, I also agree with Evan and Siobhan. I think this is a great plan. I think it's got soft lines to it, and I think it works. I think it works very, very well. How many parking spaces do you have in this plan, including those that you created on the street?
We have 18 on the street, 7 basically for the house, and I think Mr. Weeks said about 42 in the back.
So about 67 or so spaces?
No.
Oh, no,
45.
20 in the back.
20 in the
20 up in near the bathrooms.
45, good. And we talked about how many trees are going to be taken out. How many trees, I'm looking at this plan, how many trees do you anticipate will be planted?
We haven't tallied that up yet, nor have we broken it down by species.
Got it. And personally, the lights in the parking lot, I think that we have to have lights in the parking lot because that's going to create a hazard at night. We don't gate our parks, and without lights, that is an invitation to problems back there. I also don't think that we need a fence in that area. I know that for many of our parks there are no fences between parking lots and playing fields, and this one, I think, again, in terms of creating a softer park, I think that works really well. I also, I did a little, actually, I didn't do any research. Our village clerk did some really great research going back to 2008, and she pulled the minutes for us from a couple of meetings where the village was contemplating whether or not to buy the Shedler property and what would be done with it if it was purchased. And I know that there was a lot of support for purchasing this property from the local community, the neighborhood in the Shedler area. There was a lot of concern. I was told that a developer would buy it. It could be a gas station. It could be a convenience store, strip mall, townhouses. And so the community at large urged the village to buy it. And I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from those minutes from the October 22nd, 2008 meeting. And Dylan, could you pull up that other drawing? This is the drawing that was contemplated at that time. It was it's dated October 13th, 2008. It has the same, if you notice the similarity to what we're doing here, it has the same multi-purpose field, except the most significant difference on that drawing is that instead of a softball size field that is self-contained in the multi-purpose field, it has a full 90-foot diamond that encompasses pretty much all of the park. And I know that came to this council, and this council said we didn't want to do that. And so with that, I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts. Although the members of the Shedler Committee believe the primary objective at this time is the preservation of the property as open space, they have also discussed in detail and approved the conceptual plan for the improvement of the property, which includes a baseball diamond, an overlay multi-purpose field, an ADA-compliant walking trail, a wooded area, and a parking lot. It goes on to say, at that same meeting, in the minutes, significantly, the representatives of the West Saddle River Road Neighborhood Association have assured the committee that the neighbors support the conceptual plan, including the eventual installation of permanent lighting for athletic fields. That is also something that this council has declined to move forward on. I'm also going to quote from the December 3rd, 2008 meeting. Mayor Fund said, if the Shedler property is purchased, the residents need to remember that it will be utilized in the future, and he does not want anyone to come to the council in the future complaining about a field being there. And I also want to go on, there's been a lot of discussion about turf. And there was a lot of discussion about the 2017 agreement from the Shedler Ad Hoc Committee. I point to page 10 of that report, and it says, and I quote, "The committee has considered the costs and benefits of multiple field surface options and preliminarily recommends Field Turf Cool Play." That is a brand name. An artificial grass surface that allows for significantly more use, has no exposed rubber, remains significantly cooler than other artificial grass surfaces, maintains green, manicured appearance, and is economically sensible. And I know that Pam and Siobhan have spent a lot of time and are going to spend more time looking for the most eco-friendly field that is available to put on that, in that park. We have actually cut back from the original design, the design that the decision to buy this piece of property was based upon. And so I just wanted to bring that out. Like I said, all I did was read from the record, from the minutes taken in this room. Moving forward, we are going to try and find the most eco-friendly field to put there. We are going to plant as many trees as is feasible because we want more trees. But our kids need fields, and they need full-size playing surfaces. We have actually, if we could go back to the other drawing for a moment. If you notice that Little League size / regulation softball size field, which is what is known as a 40-60 diamond, is completely self-contained within the confines of the multi-purpose field. We have tried to come up with a plan that makes no one happy, but gets to as many people and services as many people as we possibly can. I know I've gotten many calls from people in the baseball community saying, we need a 90-foot diamond. We were promised a 90-foot diamond. It didn't work out here. Between the berm and the house, it just didn't work out. The lights, which were contemplated and agreed to at that time, this council at this time is not putting in lights. We are trying to listen to all the people in the community, both the neighborhood and the sports organizations. I want to thank Chris Rudeshauser. I want to thank Heather Mailander for all the work that you have done. I have no idea how many drawings you and your engineering department have done, But this one, I believe, is the one that I'm going to keep my fingers crossed we're going to make fly. So, Chris, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have the drawing that was approved in 2017 or 18 with the ad hoc committee? Can we compare it to this?
It's on the website.
I know, I just want to know if it's, if it's in the computer anywhere where we could look at it real quick.
Go down to the bottom, under the ad hoc presentation, launch the PDF, and it's in there, if you want to see it. All the way at the bottom.
So like the fourth bullet point
Yeah,
down.
the fourth bullet.
Down.
All the way down.
Down.
Underneath,
Down.
yeah, fourth bullet point.
Down,
There
down.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
There we go.
Mayor, one of the residents is having difficulty hearing. If we could just make sure everyone is
Yes,
speaking
I
into the
am
microphone.
aware, Rohan, and as you can see, I have asked council to speak loudly into the mic on several occasions. I reiterate that request. We have some people in the audience who can't hear. They're a little more hard of hearing, and it would be great if we can emphasize so that everyone can hear everything we have to say.
So very clearly, Evan should be closer to the microphone and speak clearly, slower.
Thank you,
Same
Rohan.
with Siobhan, please. Everyone else is all right, except for
Thank
the
you.
last time.
Thanks, Dylan. So looking at this plan, we see we save so many more trees. We have a protection, we have a buffer of all of these trees beyond the field for the neighborhood to protect them from Route 17 and all the pollutants. To me, this is the plan we should go with.
And unfortunately, that is not the plan that was contemplated and agreed to in contemplation of purchasing the property. That was why the property was purchased. Had there been a different plan, it is very possible that the village would not have purchased the property for so small a field that has such limited usage. And that property today could be a gas station, a convenience store, a strip mall. But that's why it was purchased.
The purpose of the ad hoc committee was to mediate, and this is a great compromise. I mean, even look at the walking path. As you're in the walking path, you're kind of in the woods around it. Currently, the walking path, you're on the street, you're on the edge, you're on Route 17.
I'm with Paul on this. I mean, we have compromised significantly because of our neighbors. Unless I'm eating the mic, I'm not sure what more I could do here.
I want to say a couple things because the public is here.
And let me just jump in
can
one second. Forgive me.
Right.
For anyone who wants to look at those minutes from 2008, because I'm sure there will be those who are interested, I've had copies made, so no one has to Oprah them, and I will leave them at the table at the end of the night.
And Siobhan, if I can just finish hopefully this is loud enough. I think I'm agreeing with Paul on this. I think we have compromised significantly. There are no lights built for the field. There is no concession stands. There is no, there's no bleachers being built. On the other hand, we've also compromised with the sporting folks who wanted a bigger field. And then finally, we've compromised with the folks around who really stress the history and have pumped $2.8 million into the house and have saved and created a safe zone for that house as well. At the end of the day, we're not going to make every single person happy, but the plan that Chris is presenting tonight does about as much as you can do. The best way to judge a compromise is that nobody leaves with everything that they want, and that's exactly what that other plan does for us. And in fairness, just because there was an ad hoc committee, which I absolutely respect, that came up with a plan in 2017, it doesn't mean they had the right to supersede over the plan that was in 2008, which is exactly why we spent millions of taxpayer dollars to buy this property for the benefit of the village as a whole. And I think what the current plan does is compromise and balances the needs of the neighbors with the village as a whole, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And I don't think we should be cherry-picking plans from, there are, at this point, dozens of plans out there, and we could all cherry-pick the one we like the most, but, I'm stuck, as all 5 of us are, voting tonight or voting today on what we want.
We're not voting.
Well, expressing an opinion contemporaneously.
We're getting a consensus
exactly
on what we will vote for next week. And while we're doing, could we put that drawing that we're looking for a consensus on? Sorry, go ahead.
You done?
I guess so, sure.
Okay. So, in fairness to the conversation, because Shedler is a conversation that occurs all the time, going back to the ad hoc committee, I just want to make sure that we're all dealing with the same set of facts. In 2017, the property had yet to be declared historic. So we had no oversight. So really what's unfortunate is I think the ad hoc committee at that time did a great job. Can you hear me, Rohan? Okay, too fast. That's going to take me twice as long. Can you hear me now? I'm going to look at you the whole time. Give me that. In 2017, when this plan came forth, we were not encumbered by the state. The historic declaration had not occurred. You'll notice if you go back to the 2017 plan that the entrance to the park was on Terhune Road, and somehow after that, and there was no playground. Shedler is clearly an important part of Shedler, but we have to start thinking about our fields as an inventory and a system. And there is no doubt that our other fields are exhausted and tired, and they have carried the burden of the failure to develop Shedler for 15 years. As the fields liaison, I see several things. One, the failure to develop this field and have it utilized has caused people to suffer, literally suffer. We have older adults who do not wish to play on our grass because it's not maintained. And when Orchard closed, even though it's a Board of Ed field, it really stressed our fields out. I say these things repetitively, but they're important to me. When I was a kid, not as many women were playing sports. The emergence of Title IX, things like girls' flag football, which are all great for our gender equality in sports, have further strained our fields. And the ad hoc committee was a good approach. However, the then council turned their back and made changes in darkness. The community was left out of the historic declaration fact. It was a surprise to everybody. And I know because when I was a citizen and found out about it, I told open space, parks, fields, and all these committees that we assembled. So this drawing that you're seeing here has been from countless hours of public input and listening. And where some people feel that something's too big, other people feel that they're giving it up. The lack of lighting is going to be an issue for the sports community. It just is. We have people who want to play under the lights. We have people who we want to maintain their residency as older adults. Our over 50 and 60 soccer league have been attending all of our meetings, and they say that it's almost ageist that the kids get too much playing space. So the old plan, 2 very important factors. 1, we were not encumbered by the state. 2, the state wouldn't approve that plan because you have so much development around the house, and this is where we are now. I also want to say this because this is a complicated thing, and everyone says, oh, it's approved. This council will move this to a vote. There will be a resolution. But then we go back to the state, and we lose our say. So this is a plan for us to move forward, finally, after 15 years, to return $7 million. Okay, let's be clear. The property was $2.7 million. That's a lot of money. We've pumped $2.6 million into a house that nobody has a solution for. And yes, the house is beautiful. I don't know what we're going to do with it. It has no insulation. And nobody, every time I say we're looking for solutions, there's been a lot of, people have ideas, but the house is also dictated by SHPO. So if we decided to put somebody in there, which would be virtually impossible because the prior council ripped out the full-size bath, we are stuck now with the operating cost of the house. So I just wanted to add that. I know it's a lot, but this project has lingered in our community for way too long. People like me, when my children were 4 and 6, supported the purchase of it, thinking maybe we'd get a slight little return. Well, my youngest is a senior, and we're definitely not going to be playing on this field. The time has come to move it forward, to balance what the sports communities need, and they need a lot, you guys. We don't have enough fields, and then balance the neighborhood, and I think this is a good compromise. I hope we vote on it next week. I plan on voting yes, and I hope everybody else joins me in that.
I just want to correct one thing you said, because I did ask Tony Merlino at the house yesterday, is it true that there is no insulation in the house? And he said, no, that's not true. There are pockets where they couldn't put in insulation, but the house is insulated. Also, it looks to me like all we are going to be voting on is the layout of the park. I still have significant doubts about artificial turf. So far, none of the the vendors we've spoken to have given us third-party independent studies to show that infill is any better now, the alternatives, to crumb rubber, that they are any safer for people playing on the fields than crumb rubber, which is known to have carcinogenic chemicals in it. I am concerned about toxins, and even the EPA has noted that studies of alternative infill are lacking or limited. It's impossible to assess the safety of artificial turf at this point. You can call it ecoturf, you can call it natural, but our kids are at risk. All artificial turf is hotter than natural grass. They create heat islands, which in turn contribute to global warming and is the source of our climate crisis. We're exposing kids to heat stroke, and sometimes I've heard people say, well, the kids just won't play on it when it's that hot. Well, then we have an empty field. Aesthetically, artificial turf can't compare to real grass. I haven't done an analysis of the cost comparison, but I remain skeptical.
Anyone else? Good. I think we have a consensus. Let's move on. Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome. Through you, Mayor, moving on to item A1, we have a number of issues actually ranging from A1 through A12 relative to Ridgewood Water. We have our Director of Water Operations, Rich Calby, with us here tonight. I'd ask Rich to come forward to address these issues.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Good evening, Rich.
You like me to run through the items, or?
All you.
Okay. All right, sorry for the number of items, but August was a quiet month, so we're...
It was worth it.
Coming back with our business. So for the first item on your agenda is 9A1, which is the customer billing portal, notice of award of year 2. This is the second year award of a contract to the vendor Rio Supply for the WaterSmart customer portal. It's in the amount of $43,800. The first year of the service was from October 21st through September 22nd. That was previously approved and paid. The second year started in October 22nd and will be ending at the end of this month. And so this is for the payment of that second year.
Questions? Good. Next.
Next item is 9A2. This is for approval of a 3-year contract award for the subsequent years for the WaterSmart portal. This is for the years 23 through 26. This will begin on October of this year through September of next year and subsequently annually for 2 more years after that. This is a separate approval request because the vendor Rio Supply that was in the prior approval is no longer the vendor for WaterSmart. It is now under a company called Vertex One, so that's why we listed it as a separate approval. It's a sole source approval for a 3-year contract. Total contract price for the 3 years, total of $122,529.70. Year 1 will be $27,845. Subsequent years are listed in the memo, $46,578 for year 2 and $48,106.70 for year 3.
And thank you for anticipating my question as to why that was a separate item. Next.
Any questions? Oh.
Excuse me, questions. Apology. Next.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next item, number 3, award of a contract for disposal of soil spoils from repairs and replacements. Every year, the Ridgewood Water Distribution Division does a number of repairs system-wide in all 4 municipalities. These could be things like hydrant replacements, water main breaks, water pipe replacement. Right now, we're in the midst of doing a lot of lead service line replacements. Naturally, all the spoils that come out of the ground has to be disposed of. We don't put them back in the ground. Replace a lot of the excavations with fresh soils and dense grade aggregate, backfill that's required by local municipalities. So this approval here is for the disposal of that soil that's been stockpiled to company RVH Mulch Supply. I'm out of Wyckoff, New Jersey, and the amount not to exceed $50,000. RVH is a vendor we've utilized in the past.
Questions?
Good. Next item, number 4, award of a sole source contract for GIS software support. Both the Village of Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water utilize a software package manufactured by a company in California called ESRI. GIS is short for Geographic Information Systems. This is the program that Ridgewood Water and the Village utilizes to maintain all the assets owned and operated by the Village and Ridgewood Water. For example, on the Ridgewood Water side, we have complete mapping of the entire system: pipes, valves, hydrants, buildings, treatment plants, storage tanks. This software agreement is necessary for us to maintain that program and get the necessary support from ESRI for the 3 years that it's for. Year 1 was already approved and paid for. This is for approval of the subsequent 2 years, including 2023.
Questions? Good.
Next item is item number 5, similar to number 4, but this is software support for our SCADA system. SCADA is Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. This is the system that controls the entire water system. It's a sole source program manufactured by Emerson Process Management, Power and Water Solutions. It's been utilized by the utility for decades. The support software is necessary on an annual basis to support the program. They provide us on-call service, an 800 number that we could call 24 hours a day in the event that there's an emergency. Year 1 of this contract was also previously approved. This is for the approval of the subsequent years, 2 and 3 of the contract.
Questions?
Moving on, the next item is number 6. This is for granulated activated carbon material for PFAS treatment. The 2 active plants that have been online in the system consist of the Carr treatment plant, which has been online since 2019, the 20 treatment plant, which has been online for a year now, since August of 22. The media, the granulated activated carbon that's within those treatment vessels, does not last forever. Eventually it absorbs its magnitude of PFAS and must be replaced. We're replacing it with what's called municipally reactivated carbon. Essentially, these vessels were replaced once before. The company Calgon took our carbon back. They removed the PFAS from the carbon by incineration, put it on a shelf, stored it for us, and are bringing it back. So it's a recyclable material. It's sustainable in that fashion, and because of that, we're paying much less. So this is an approval for replacement of media at both the Chwinney and Carr plant. The replacement itself will occur sometime prior to the end of this year.
I just have a question. Does it have the same absorption as it did when it was brand new?
Slightly less.
Okay.
We're counting what are called a number of bed volumes. Essentially determines how much flow can go through it to determine how much less we're getting from the municipal reactivated versus the virgin carbon. And over time, we're going to have to do a cost comparison for that to see if it's worth buying virgin carbon to get a better,
Okay.
result.
How
per
often
dollar.
do we have to replace this?
I'm sorry.
How often do we replace the carbon?
Currently, it's twice a year. Because these are the only 2 plants we have online, they're running a significant amount of time. They're running every day of the year. Once the other 10 plants are online, I anticipate these 2 plants would have much less replacement, but at that point, we'll then be replacing via 12 plants.
So this is like the filters, the water filters we have in our homes.
Correct.
That we have to replace twice a year.
Yes, similar media, just at a much larger scale.
Much.
Much.
Thank
But
you.
aren't some of the plants going to be resin?
Correct.
And
Due to
that's-
space limitations, there are going to be at least 2 plants that are going to be vessels filled with a resin media as opposed to granulated activated carbon. Resin media is much more expensive, but does have a longer life. But currently, GAC over life cycle time and cost is showing a benefit.
Questions? Good.
Next item is number 7. This is award under a state contract. This is an annual approval that's done and recommended for the maintenance of all our pH, chlorine, and phosphate analyzers. These are the pieces of equipment that exist at all the treatment plants. They monitor how much of each of these chemicals are put into the water stream. They're required by regulation. They feed back to our SCADA system so our operators know what the volume of chemicals that are on location and how much is being pumped into the water to make sure we're within the necessary limits. This is a contract to Hawk Service. It's a state contract. They provide the annual service to all the analyzers that come out. They recalibrate them, fine-tune them, do any repairs and replacements that are necessary.
Questions? Good.
Item 8, this is an award under another contract, but this is an educational services contract for the state of New Jersey for the purchase of a mini Bobcat excavator. This piece of equipment is necessary for Ridgewater to continue with our lead service line replacement program. We don't utilize the heavy standard equipment you see out on the road when we're doing lead service lines. We utilize a mini excavator to limit the amount of damage to the roadway, and because we're pulling much smaller size lines compared to what you see at a water main break. In addition to lead service lines, we do utilize this for small repairs like repairs and replacements of hydrants, valves. The addition of this piece of equipment will allow us to ramp up our lead service line replacement program, allow us to put 2 teams out in the field where currently we only have 1.
Questions?
Next item is number 9, award of a professional services contract for PFAS treatment designs for the East Side, Main, and Mountain treatment plants. East Side is located within the village of Ridgewood. Main is located within the borough of Glen Rock. Mountain within the township of Wyckoff. These are the last 3 of the 12 plants that need to be designed. The remaining 12 are all nearing final completion. 2 are under construction. These will be the last 3 that designed, bid, and then constructed for completion in 2026. We solicited, in this case, fair and open responses. That means we published an advertisement in the newspaper, solicited proposals from any qualified firm in the state of New Jersey. We got 5 proposals in. All 5 are rated on the basis of their responses, pricing being only one of the 9 categories rated. We took the top 3, interviewed them, and did a final rating. On the basis of that, the firm Arcadis was selected. We then negotiated the final price with Arcadis based on some assumptions and questions they had. The price went up from the initial bid to include items. Best example would be that the state federal, not federal, but flood hazard area rules recently changed. So in the midst of that, they now have to do a permit for one of the plants, the East Side plant, to permit it under those new rules. So they added that cost into the design. So there's a breakdown attached here that shows the additions. There actually was some subtractions as well for things that we took out. I'll negotiate the final price of $1,084,500.
Questions?
Right.
Keep
Next
going.
item is number 10. This is to authorize emergency water interconnection with the Township of Mahwah. This is an emergency interconnect that has existed as far as I could see back to 1975. New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection is requiring that all systems codify these interconnections via an agreement. The Mahwah interconnect was the final one that we needed to complete. The most recent one that was completed by the Village Council was about 2 or 3 years ago, was with the Borough of Waldwick. So this is the final one. The agreement is attached and has actually been, I think, already introduced by the Township of Mahwah.
Yeah. Through Mayor, I just want to thank my colleague Ben Kesmarski, who's the business administrator in Mahwah. This agreement was stuck in the pipeline, so to speak, and we were able to move it forward, and it has been considered by the council in Mahwah already.
It's a good thing. It's something we need and are required to have.
Benefits both towns.
Yep.
It's got a couple of typos in it. Can I hand them to you?
Thank you. Item 11, authorize contact in Green Acres regarding PFAS treatment facilities and the use of land preserved for recreation and conservation. This is an item that Ridgewood Water and the village worked intimately with our policy team and local senator and other staff on. I definitely want to thank Senator Schapese and her staff for introducing this bill. Not only benefits the Village of Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water, but many other utilities in the state, because like many others, Ridgewood Water has existed over 100 years. A lot of our wells and facilities exist on recreation and open space. There's small parcels of land with a small building. In some cases, only enough space to add a small addition for PFAS treatment, but now challenged with them being listed on a ROSI, having to go for a full Green Acres diversion will require and delay us getting safe drinking water to the 61,000 consumers in our system. So what this bill does is allow a new process whereby any utility can submit a request directly to the Commissioner of New Jersey DEP, citing the need for the treatment because of the regulation for any contaminant, not just PFAS, and allow that new treatment be installed. So this resolution in front of you gives the Director of Ridgewood Water, myself, the permission to submit that application to the Commissioner. It does require a public hearing. I'm likely going to schedule the first of 2 in October.
Questions? Let's wrap it up.
Last one, I'm losing my voice. Number 12 is to authorize a change order for a trolley gate replacement. Trolley gate, for any of you who don't know, is a rolling gate. We've had one that exists at our Glen Avenue facility to secure the property for our distribution maintenance team, all their equipment, trucks, loaders, piping, materials, etc. The gate did break down over a year ago. We did a prior approval to replace it. What wasn't included in the original quote was the mechanism, the computer equipment, to have it communicate to our SCADA system. So this is the change order for the board and equipment that makes that communication.
Questions? Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. And Mayor, I just want to mention, too, Rich and I have a meeting later this week with our legislative delegation, Senator Corrado and our assembly members, to talk about these continued challenges that Ridgewood Water faces and how we're going to continue to need their partnership in Trenton, especially when dealing with the DEP. So he and I are both looking forward to that meeting.
Thanks, Keith.
Okay, moving on to item C, which are budget matters. The first is a proposal from Peter Primavera Partners, LLC. Authorization of this would allow his firm, in conjunction with our village engineering department, to submit an application for authorization to SHPO under the State Register Act.
Questions?
I kind of would like to hear from Matt Rogers on some of the items that our residents have brought up with regards to Peter Primavera, with his, he said he's worked on certain projects, it's been checked out, he's not worked on those projects, he said he's worked with certain people, those people have said no, as well as him supplying incorrect information to our village CFO, doesn't match his business registration, all those kind of things. Are we not concerned as a village that we're even considering hiring this person with this background?
Well, I think that's up to the council to decide whether or not they're going to go ahead with hiring Peter Primavera in this instance. I know that the issue with regard to the EIN number has been or is about to be straightened out, and there was a discrepancy only in terms of the use of the first name and the name of the company, something to that extent. But all the other issues, I haven't done diligence. I was never asked to do diligence with regard to whether or not he is a member of, whatever the issues were, whether or not he's a member of the Sons of the American Revolution or anything else like that. So I don't have a response for you in regard to that information. So it's up to the council to decide.
I think us as a council should be concerned. Should we be calling, should we be taking his resume, divvying it up, and calling these people and make sure that he's actually worked on these jobs?
Well, actually, Heather did make a bunch of calls, and we had already decided to hire him. This is simply an extension into the next phase of his contract. So we looked at those issues and decided to move on with them.
I think that people called the people that Heather called, and they said, well, we really didn't, it's very sketchy. I'm sorry.
I couldn't begin
we should be embarrassed to hire this person.
I couldn't begin to comment on what you were told by other people. I know that I've been very satisfied with the work that he has done. He illuminated us on many, many issues of historic preservation.
We have documentation from people that he said he worked with, and these people are like, no, he didn't work with me, or he didn't work on this project, or I don't know why he put his name on this project, because he didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah,
that scares me.
I don't know anything about that allegation, and as I've said before,
we were sent documentation from residents.
You've got to be careful when you talk about someone's work history, that if you impugn it and you are incorrect, it's a problem. So, again, I don't think that the rest of the council has any issue with this. If anybody does, please chime in. Hearing nothing? I said, I don't think anyone else on the council has any issue with whether or not to hire him, and the issue is whether or not to extend his contract. Is there a consensus on whether or not to extend his contract?
I've found his input helpful, knowledgeable, a little quirky, but I think he knows his stuff. And I think he's helpful in the process.
And through you, Mayor, I just want to clarify that both Mr. Rogers and Chris from Engineering will both be reviewing anything that is submitted on behalf of the village. So, and that is something that we have talked about internally as well.
Rohan, what he said was that Matt Rogers and Chris Rudishauser. I beg your pardon?
May I sit there?
You may. Absolutely.
So what are we talking about?
Let me just repeat for Rohan that what Keith said was that both Chris Rudishauser and Matt Rogers will be working with Peter Primavera to ensure that his work is up to snuff. That's what he said.
So I just want to say a couple of things. I think it's a slippery slope when we go and start doing our own background checks. I will say that even meeting with the turf vendors before they left, I said, I'm going to bring these out in front and just make sure your businesses know, because there may be phone calls from Ridgewood, which is a good thing. But I also want to say that this project of Shedler has relied heavily on historic consultants that were not put out to bid. Connolly and Hickey, I believe, when you look at the budget, we paid $250,000 to. So this is pretty nominal, given the $7 million price tag and the fact that we need the project to move forward. I agree with Pam, we need some help, and this isn't that expensive. Given the fact that the prior council authorized $250,000 for historical consultants, I think this seems reasonable and we should move forward with it.
Good. Let's move on.
Item 2 is a state contract award for tri-band radios for vehicles in the police department. This is being recommended by Sergeant Chuck through Chief Lyons. Total not to exceed $18,535.
Questions? Questions?
I apologize. The memo was dated July 13th, so it did say sergeant, but I am corrected. He is a police lieutenant. Thank you. With regard to item 3 on the agenda, this is for the purchase of ammunition. This is being recommended by Chief Lyons as well. There is a price increase of approximately 14% over last year. However, the requisite amount of ammunition that they need to buy each year remains the same.
Questions? Next.
Next item is the award of contract for the village website. This contract is being recommended to be awarded by our IT director, Dylan Hanson, in addition to the communications committee that was formed to review these proposals. And the not to exceed amount is $31,884.
And I just want to take a moment to, again, thank Siobhan for all of her efforts in carrying this forward. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And thank you to Dylan, the staff, and my communications committee. I feel very lucky that this went so smoothly.
Questions? Next.
Okay. The next recommendation comes from Rich Calby with regard to his responsibilities for our GPS system in all of our municipal vehicles across the village. He is recommending that we change vendors and that we move to Verizon Connect for an amount not to exceed $28,197.60. I can tell you that in 2 of my prior municipalities, we did also move from a former vendor to Verizon Connect and had a very good experience. So I heartily endorse Rich's recommendation.
But Keith, this wouldn't cover police and fire vehicles.
Correct.
Okay.
But keep in mind that there are other tracking devices in both of those. I did have that conversation with both Chief Judge and Chief Lyons regarding same.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Next.
Okay. Item 6 is award of a professional services contract for an archaeological study for the Zabriskie Shedler house and property. To answer the question that was asked earlier, my office did work with Mr. Primavera to determine who we could solicit to conduct the archaeological study. I can tell you that with the various vendors that were approached, it seems like the workload relative to this is somewhat intense, and Richard Grubb and Associates was the only responsive vendor who has the time capacity to be able to conduct this survey.
Questions?
Yeah. My only request is, can I be present when they do the survey? I think it'd be really interesting.
Sure. And we will likely have a pre-meeting on this, Deputy Mayor, so we can certainly invite you to attend that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No?
Yeah, I just have a technical. Once we approve this, we let SHPO know.
So I've already had conversations with SHPO about the fact that this was on the agenda for tonight. I think they were encouraged by that, especially since some of the residents in the neighborhood also have requested of SHPO that the council move on this action.
Mm-hmm.
So they were encouraged by the fact that the council was considering this tonight.
Thanks.
I have a question. Because in the Hunter report, didn't they recommend a Phase 2 archaeological study? Is there a difference between Phase 2 and Phase 1B archaeological survey?
So it's my understanding, and maybe Chris can shed some light on this too, that the appropriate step would be to do the Phase 1, receive those results, and then determine if there's any further study that's necessary. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Chris?
That's accurate.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, moving on to item 7. We have 3 municipalities that we are going to enter into shared services agreement for styrofoam densifier services. In this case, it's the city of Garfield, the borough of Oradell, and the borough of Paramus.
And didn't we already have 2 on board?
Yes.
Glen Rock and Washington Township.
Yeah, Washington.
Am I correct in saying that we're at capacity in terms of shared
we
services?
Yeah.
At this point, yes.
And who thought that would happen this quickly? That's really terrific.
And in fairness, we have probably 3 other municipalities that inquired after the 3 you're considering tonight, who we had to respectfully turn down. If anything changes with regard to capacity, Sean Hamlin knows that we have other options to include additional municipalities.
Yeah, this is such a win-win.
This is great. This really is.
Yeah, Sean, thank
still
you.
I still see people putting styrofoam out in bulk waste. And if you could discuss that with Sean.
I have actually discussed that with Sean, and the collectors are all asked to be aware of that and identify those addresses so we can visit those people to properly dispose.
Great.
Just anecdotally, they are leaving it because my neighbors put a bunch of stuff out and they left it. So I think that's
That's
just
good.
don't take it, and that was sort of interesting to see it all left there. They had those like groceries that are delivered in those mail order coolers out, and they had 3 of them, and so they left them. And when they asked me, they said, "Why do you?" I said, "Oh, because you can recycle that, and you should take it." So
We should have like a little note or something that they could leave, because like you said, your neighbors had no idea why they left it. It would be good to know.
That's a very good idea.
No, but I think there may be problems with the stickers.
and the glue going on the styrofoam.
Well, it's got to. You could put something in
Do
there.
a door hanger or something like that.
Something.
I'll talk to Sean
Something.
about that. Item 8 is authorize a shared services agreement for dewatering sludge disposal from the Water Pollution Control Facility. This agreement's with the Passaic Valley Sewer Commission.
Questions? No one has any questions about dewatered sludge disposal? All right, fine.
Item 9 is to authorize a temporary shared services agreement for the removal of trees on county roads with Bergen County. We are in receipt of an August 28th letter from Tom Dutch, our county administrator. The county has revised their policy relative to the removal of trees on county roads, and they're requiring each municipality to sign a hold harmless and indemnification agreement for each removal for each separate tree, which will also require a separate inspection. So by entering into this agreement with the county, we'll be meeting their new policy requirements.
Questions? Let's go.
Item 10 on the agenda is an insertion of an item of revenue for $15,000 for a DEP grant.
Questions? Good.
Okay, moving on to policy, which is item D. We have an update to Chapter 212, Parks and Recreation Areas, and this would be to prohibit the use of electronic scooters and electronic bikes as outlined in the ordinance that has been recommended by the police department and has been written by Chris Rutenhauser, our Director of Engineering.
I'm very glad to see this because there have been a lot of articles in the New York Times about e-mobility causing problems in Paris and New York, and I haven't heard that they've caused big problems in Ridgewood, but the time may come where we would increase the scope of this.
Good. Anybody else?
Item D2 is the report that was prepared by the Ridgewood Zoning Board of Adjustment dated March 14th, 2023, which included recommendations to both the Village Council and to the Village Planning Board. I recently met with Bruce Whitaker, the attorney for the Board of Adjustment. He brought this report to my attention. I've had the opportunity to read it, as has Matt Rogers. There are recommendations that were considered by the Planning Board, and there was an appendix, a supplement to tonight's packet that was provided to the Council before the meeting. I know that the Deputy Mayor, who is the liaison from the Village Council to the Planning Board, may have some comments on this, as may Matt Rogers. Pam?
Yeah. The last 5 are what we already were talking about, because that's from their 2021 recommendations, and we are in the middle of addressing those. And then the top three that are more recent make all the sense in the world to me. To increase the application fees and the escrow deposits makes a lot of sense. And having the village planner, now this is a manpower thing. I don't know, this is maybe more up to you, Keith, whether the planner can review each report and make sure that they're complete, so that people don't get to the meeting and then realize something is missing. And I think it's an interesting suggestion, number 2, that there be somebody from the planning board who also serves on the zoning board. Right now, we happen to have on the planning board the former chair of the zoning board, and it's wonderful. It's really good. He really helps a lot. And then the as-built survey is so important. This is number 3, that there be an as-built survey that has to be done once the work is completed, because sometimes people will get the permit and then not do the work. And then the next person comes along and says, well, why should I have to get a permit? It's just not fair. So I'd be in favor of all 3 of those.
And I'm looking at this, and I support all of these recommendations. I think that they're just common sense recommendations, and I'll ask Matt, are these things that we need to pass new ordinances?
Yeah, I think as you look at each one of these, the increase in fees would have to be done by ordinance. The membership of the planning board, to allow for a member to be also a member of the zoning board, would have to be done in the ordinance, as well as the as-built survey requirement.
And also the extension of Resolution 21-285 to make that permanent.
Yes, yes. So all of these are things that were recommended by the zoning board. Process is that they recommend them to us. We turn them over to the planning board for review. Planning board has looked at them, and I know there's a number of ordinances we're going to be talking about probably at the next work session. And through that discussion, that's the way the municipal land use law intended the municipalities to work for, to help and assist in the review and the processing of development applications. So that's really what we're after here.
So this will go to the planning board and then to us.
Well, this is
And then back.
this is going to get discussed by us at the next work session. We'll look at that. If we make recommendations on those ordinances, because the planning board has proposed ordinances on a few of these. Some of these other ones may need to be put together. We'll just have to check and make sure. But if there's recommendations that we make, then that goes back to the planning board. If we accept them as they are, we can then work with the planning board, advise them of that, and then lead to the introduction of those ordinances as soon as we can.
Got it. Thanks, Matt.
Could I just ask a question? Is there any way with adding the members, we can move that forward for next week? Because once it's introduced, then you have the 20 days, and that way we could start in January with that person?
I would think so. I mean, it depends upon whether or not
that's what I was suggesting
there's been a search or what you want to do to make sure you got the right person doing both. But yes, you can move on that as soon as you can.
Okay.
Because you can't appoint until after the ordinance is adopted.
But can we...
Into the mic.
Can we feature that before the position's created, if Heather puts it out for people to apply?
You can interview for it. You can look at it if you reach kind of a consensus tonight that that's something you want to implement, and then we've got to get the ordinance introduced and the like.
And I just want to say administratively, because we actually had this similar structure when I served in Elmwood Park. We always had a member of the planning board who also served on the Board of Adjustment, but it was by tradition. It was not by ordinance. So the council can consider whether they want to do that by yearly appointment and have an overlap, or whether they want to require it and bind future councils to have the same structure.
Good. So we'll go over this at our next work session on the 27th.
Right. And I think what's important, Mayor, is that the addendum to tonight's agenda that was given out by Heather before the meeting, the recommendations for changes are in there. So this is definitely some reading material for everyone before the next meeting.
Great. Thank you. moving on.
And then finally, under operations, we have two items, item 1 and item 2, which are recommendations from the police department for surplus property and vehicles. Any objections?
Nope.
And then finally is a resolution recommended by Jeremy Kleiman, our OEM coordinator, formally appointing the local Emergency Management Council, which needs to do as part of our OEM plan renewal with the state police.
And I'm going to just mention that I don't know if you're looking for a general Chamber of Commerce member, or I'm guessing the president of the Chamber of Commerce, because Gary Colasaire is no longer the president. His term has ended, and if that's the case, then you want Glenn Carlo.
Glenn, yep.
And also, the welfare officer is incorrect. We actually go with the county now. So I guess either we put Bergen County or we take it out. I don't know, whichever
We can
our
check.
OEM coordinator suggests.
We can talk to Jeremy tomorrow and
Okay.
determine how best to
Right.
have a representative from the county.
And
welfare
is
department.
Britt Ezrati still with the EMS? I know she's no longer a...
I believe she is. We'll confirm that.
Yeah,
though.
just make sure, because I know she's no longer a parking enforcement officer, but I'm hopeful that she's still with EMS. Good. Anything else? No?
That is all I have, Mayor.
Good. Thank you all. We'll return to public comment.
I can't hear what you're saying. So, first off, my first
Name and address. Name and address, Rohan.
Rohan De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road, Ridgewood, New Jersey, 07450.
Thank you.
You understand how that comes across? It's frustrating. It's ridiculous. May I ask one question? Who's in charge of ADA compliance here?
It depends.
Somebody
I
has
can
to
try
address this.
I can try and answer it for you. It depends upon what mode or medium you're talking about, whether it's...
Well, I come to a public meeting. According to what I have read, I have every right to come to this meeting, have access, come here, hear what you are saying, and understand. There's no point in me coming here if I can't understand or hear you. And that's just my particular disability. Somebody else might have a vision disability. So I understand that every municipality in New Jersey must meet ADA compliance. Is that true or untrue?
I think that, I know that the sound system in here has been looked at a number of times over the years, and I think they've got it to the best that they can do it. And I don't know that there is another aspect of it that they can improve. I haven't talked to Dylan about that, but certainly I think that conversation is always worthwhile.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Matt. Now, just as an example, you know, when we were first in the pandemic and doing Zoom calls and so on, everybody was looking at the screen. We had to realize over time that we had to look at the camera. Otherwise, the person on the other end sees this and not the person and is not engaging in a conversation. So perhaps I could implore all of you up there and all the people on all the various boards and panels and so on, not to look at the person you're talking to. For example, Paul, if you're speaking to Keith, don't look at Keith. Talk into the microphone. Or have that. And Evan and Siobhan, if you could just slow the speed at which you speak, that would be immensely helpful. Really. Because I can't understand what y'all are saying a lot of the time. And it's frustrating. So I might, throw my hands up in the air. But, it's difficult living with a disability.
And Rohan, as you can see, we will make every accommodation that we can. If you want to sit up here,
well, that helped, but I still didn't understand.
I understand, and as you can see, it's not a question of anyone. I think that the sound system is fine when we focus on it, and it's just a question of sometimes we forget. And on behalf of the council, I apologize for that. And we're all going to work, as you can see, I've tried to remind everyone, and we're going to continue that effort, and we're going to try and make it better at every meeting.
Thank you. Perhaps you can say that right after the Pledge of Allegiance, so that people are focused and understand that.
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Okay. So, is Chris still here? No, he's gone. I wanted to find out who the arborist in town was.
Declan Madden.
Okay, Declan. I'll find out somehow.
Declan Madden, Madden. Okay. Declan Madden. Could I just say one thing before we go? Just because I'm on the excess and I know that I'm breaking stride. We could discuss implementing closed caption. It has been requested before. When we went over public comment improvements, can you hear me? We could do that. We also could talk to the high school who has recently implemented American Sign Language as a secondary language. So we could do some things for this. It has been requested before, and I do like the idea of the service that does do closed caption. And when we do that with Access, those are just two ideas that we might want to consider that might be helpful.
I really like the idea of closed caption. Keith, could we...
I've already written it down.
A less expensive pilot we might want to try is lapel mics for Siobhan and Evan, because these mics, they really are not comfortable to work with.
Thanks. I feel I am singled out a bit because it seems like it's always me and Siobhan. For some reason, our mics aren't working. As you can see, I'm about as close to this thing as I can possibly get, and I'm still not getting the sound I want.
You do both talk very, very quickly.
That I do. I will own that. Although, in fairness to me, I only make sense about half of the time, so if I talk twice as fast, it evens out.
I wonder if Evan had a hand mic. Would that make a difference?
I like that idea.
Yeah, maybe if everybody had hand mics, then they could look at people and...
I don't think we all... I mean, correct me. You can hear several of us pretty well.
I can, but if everybody had hand mics, for example...
Well, I don't think we
they
all
could
need
continue
hand
to
mics.
look their normal way.
Yeah. And anyway, we're going to move on.
Okay.
So, okay?
I think everybody else is here.
Thank you.
And I do want to say I did have a Diet Coke because I was worried that it wouldn't stay up, so I'm not going to have caffeine before the meeting.
And we're moving on.
Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. So I see that you have a number of different examples here of EcoTurf. I still do not understand what EcoTurf is and how it will affect the groundwater and our wells, our private wells. Each day I find out that more and more people in that neighborhood have private wells, and so this is a concern. And if we are, tied to that, it seems like you're all pushing for this, except for Lorraine, and maybe Pam is straddling that fence. I'm not really sure. I know that, Siobhan, when I emailed you, you said that you had asked someone to join you in these discussions, and that, Pam was agreeable. I don't know if that offer was also made to Lorraine, and she just isn't available. It might be helpful to have all ears.
Can only have 2 people at a meeting.
Okay.
Because then it's a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. So you can only have 2 council members at a meeting.
Okay.
And I
Thank you
offered
for
it to
educating me.
both no's. And that's...
Okay. So, once again, it goes back to, PFOAs, and, if you are talking about turf, I just read through the amended Ridgewood complaint from the Ridgewood water complaint against the plaintiffs. And it's very concerning because, you spell out all the dangers of PFAS, and there are a lot of sound bites that are contrary to, it's in everything, and, people aren't concerned. So I think that we do have to address this EcoTurf and what the downstream effects for not only the Saddle River, but all the people that do have those private wells. That's important because our lives depend on that, right? I am very disappointed in how things, what was discussed tonight. Especially, I guess it's a hot button for me when you say it could have been a 7-Eleven. The property, and that's supposed to make us feel better that now 100 and I don't know how many trees were going to be cut down, 78, something like that. And, right, a lot, okay? That property is unlike any other property in Ridgewood. We are on Route 17. The trees, that green canopy is a protection for us from the particulates coming off the highway, the noise, the smog, everything. So you can plant trees, but they will, in our lifetime, they're not going to get to the point of what we have now. And that's unfortunate because you're stripping this neighborhood of everything that we hold dear. I think that we wanted to work out a solution where we would feel good about something that's, about what's going to go on. And right now, I'm not the representative for the neighborhood, but I can tell you that there are a lot of people who are disappointed. You're overdeveloping that property. There are 400 people who have signed petitions against the overdevelopment of that property. So what you're saying by continuing to have the discussion about this giant field is that none of those people mean anything to you. Not one. They're all voters too. But what you're saying is your vote doesn't matter. And then to tell us we can't complain and you don't want to hear it is highly insulting. Just my opinion, and I'm trying to be as respectful as I can be. So, I guess more to come on the PFAS discussion. I can only hope that SHPO has dialed in and can listen to this discussion tonight, and maybe they can, understand that there are 400 people who are opposed to this overdevelopment, and cutting down all those trees. I feel like you're stripping this neighborhood of everything that we hold dear. There will be no gratification in it. I've had many people who are part of the sports community tell me, we don't really care what you think. We just want our field. And that's really sad to me because you've basically taken our human rights away. You passed the Green Amendment, and now you're taking away our right to clean air and clean water. And I feel like that's very unfair, and I hope SHPO doesn't approve it, and that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Nancy Brennan Hill, 136 Doremus Avenue, Ridgewood. I was struck when I looked at the diagrams of the fields, the old diagram, the new diagram. When I looked at the old diagram, I saw a park. When I looked at the new diagram, I saw a sports complex. So I think you should start referring to it as the Schindler Sports Complex, in all honesty, so that people will know what you're dealing with. And I, for one, don't think you're doing the sports people any favor. I really think it's your job to explain to them the dangers of this field and not just go along. You're the village council. We've heard people talk about the pollution caused by the PFAS. We've heard about hot spots. We've heard about more injuries caused on these plastic fields. We know that some professional organizations are moving away from these because of injuries. What are you people doing? You have a responsibility to the sports people, the kids of the village, and to the whole village. And I don't think you're representing the people of the whole village. And I don't think it's just the Schindler people in that neighborhood who are upset about this. I live way on the other side of Ridgewood, and my heart goes out for the people in that neighborhood, the noise, the pollution, and I feel angry for the whole village because we all got together and we gave a diagram of what we thought was important in the master plan. And this sports complex is completely contrary to all the items in that plan. So if you're really interested in representing the whole village, at a minimum, why don't we make this a ballot item? It's gone on for 15 years. Certainly we can slow down and give everybody in the village a chance to vote yes or no as to whether they want this. We know more now than we did when we started 15 years ago. So let's use that information, give everybody a chance to vote, and be fair. That's my request.
Thank you, Nancy.
Fretcher De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. I'm here to agree, actually, with the people who have spoken before me. I think it's an excellent idea for the ballot, adding this to the ballot, because, yes, you will get a more balanced opinion from the community. We have faced been at a great disadvantage from a transparency and informational standpoint, and that's something that we've said repeatedly. For example, the hiring of the consultant and I don't know about the archaeological expert, but the consultant that was hired previously, I'm not sure the process that was followed. I'm not sure how many people were interviewed or considered. I'm not sure whether there was a public advertisement about that. As a woman of color, that all concerns me. And it's interesting that we are putting our faith without that kind of due diligence into a project that has cost us $7 million as a community. And so that is a big issue. I also have concerns about just what I hear in the community. We're going to break ground within the month, and statements like this. I would implore you, please, to make everything public. Please go to SHPO, go to the Bergen County or wherever we have to consult with and get approvals. Please do that before we take further action on that ground, because that's what we're required to do as a part of the state. And lastly, some of the statements that we've made about the community, about the ground, people are upset. People will continue to come, and people have a right to continue to come because they're concerned about their health, the health of their children, the health of their families. And they have a right to come here and to spend their 5 minutes and 3 minutes to express that. And I would hope that you would respect that. And to say that there could be a 7-Eleven repeatedly, not just tonight. I didn't own my property at that point. I would never have bought it if there was a 7-Eleven there. But I'm there now. I've been there for a few years. And so this conversation about a 7-Eleven or a strip mall or whatever is nothing I ever would have had to consider. So I would implore you to respect that, and to respect when you're making the statements about the community and about the people who are getting up here to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Fretcher.
Rorik Holiday, 1 Franklin Avenue. First, let me congratulate the 4 of you for making more progress in the past 6 months as far as Shedler than the previous administration had done in 6 years. I have followed Shedler for many, many a year, and in many, many ways, I consider myself to be perhaps the best friend that Shedler has, because I wanted the Shedler property to be developed responsibly. And it just pained me when people talk about you ruining things that people hold dear. I tell you, I walk around Shedler time after time after time, and it was nothing but one big dump. Nothing dear about that property. Now, as far as the 2017 plan, as Lorraine should remember, time after time after time, it was referred to by the previous administration as a conceptual plan, not a final plan. Now people talk about the 2017 plan as having been cast in concrete. It was not. Okay? It was one of many plans, if you will. Now, Lorraine also mentioned the fact that about the trees along the West Saddle River Road not providing any screening. I did walk as a friend of Shedler around the property in the winter, dead of winter, about 5 or 6 years ago, and there wasn't a tree, any protection to any of the houses, either sound-wise or sight-wise. It wasn't, because they're small trees and they lost their leaves. So for 5 or 6 or 7 months a year, they offered no protection. So we can't really talk about, the trees providing protection, if you will. Now, as far as the field surface, grass versus artificial, and here I take issue with some of the comments that were made. Nothing's black and white. There is a disadvantage to using artificial turf, but what if you use grass? Grass that is usable, it has to be seeded once or twice a year. A lot of chemicals, fertilizer has to be applied to it, and it has to be mowed at least once a week. Now, the day when we're going to have battery-powered mowers is still, we're lucky if we're going to get the ordinance against leaf blowers, but mowers, if you will. What about the pollution that causes? What if someone over-applies the fertilizer, if you will, and people are worried about their wells? That's one way of making things worse. Now, as far as the house looking pretty, I don't know whether the word is pretty or not, I would like Keith to find out exactly, is the house insulated or not? Now, for someone to tell me, it's been insulated excepting some areas that are difficult to reach. I mean, I can have the best insulated house. If I keep a window open in the middle of winter, I might as well not have no insulation. Why is there any question what kind of insulation there is? Just the fact it's been nicely painted. Who cares? I know they're using single-pane windows. They're also using storm windows. And storm windows are the worst things, because you open a storm window a couple of inches for any ventilation, you might as well not have any windows at all, if you will. I mean, that was the most irresponsible development that I've ever seen, considering all the money that has gone into it. So could someone please tell me what has happened? What's the scoop on the insulation? Has it been insulated or not? Is it a tight house or not? And also, as Ellen had mentioned, I know a lot of the apologists for the previous administration would talk about, we have this beautiful house that you can have weddings in. I mean, maybe weddings for a bunch of gerbils. I mean, I have no idea what the house would be used for, or could be used for. And someone has to think in terms, what will it be used for? Who will pay for the maintenance? And this is an issue I had raised years and years ago. Don't spend a penny on the house until you determine what the house will be used for. Secondly, what it will cost to maintain and operate. Thank you very much. But anyway, congratulations for the progress you're making. Thank you.
Thank you, Rourke.
Jacqueline Hone, 30 Carriage Lane. I'd like to add to what was read about the 2008 and 2017 Shedler committees. The 2017 ad hoc committee, you mentioned Mayor Turf Field, but you failed to mention 5 pages of concerns and remediation, independent expert studies, traffic, safety, noise, and environmental studies. Will this be respected and executed by this council or entirely dismissed? The 2008 committee, from 2008 to 2017, that's 9 years. Why wasn't the 2008 90-foot baseball diamond ever completed? I'd like to read a statement, a continuation, from the same author our mayor shared. This was an email sent by that person to the residents of the Shedler neighborhood. How many members do you have in your neighborhood association? The reason I ask is that I think it would be very persuasive with the village council if the neighborhood pledged to donate some annual amount. I was thinking of something in the $5,000, $10,000 range toward the debt service of the acquisition costs of the development costs of the property. It would be even more powerful if you raise the first installment in the next month or two. Money talks, so to speak, and I think a cash contribution of even a relatively small amount would indicate how serious the neighborhood is about the preservation of this property as open space. Depending on the number of donors you have, the amount per household could be somewhere around $25, which hopefully is manageable for most people. Shedler residents refused to give that requested cash contribution to show how serious we were. The next thing we knew, a 90-foot baseball diamond was proposed, and what immediate neighbors wanted didn't make the cut. It gave the appearance that the 2008 plan was compromised, and residents called for a fair, clean process. Now, 15 years later, the writer serves on the Village of Ridgewood's Open Space Committee. The 2017 plan is overturned, and I feel like I'm having a deja vu moment. Again, the immediate residents almost unanimously oppose the current plan. Over 400 families are being ignored, and a special interest group is given serious consideration. In addition to all the questions and concerns already stated by previous speakers, petitioners, and experts that wrote into this council, which also still remain unanswered, I ask, how will this massively expanded plan be funded? It was requested by us in 2008, and I still have that question to this day. How is this massively expanded plan be funded? There hasn't been any talk on what this will cost and how it will be funded. It's a shame. The 2017 plan was to be completed by this summer. We would be walking on it right now, playing on it right now, enjoying it right now. And all we have is another plan that will most likely be defeated once again. The letter that I read into record and the statement that I've just given, I will circulate again to the council, and I hope that once again our emails don't go unanswered. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Good evening again. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. So a number of months ago, I stood up here, and before I even began to speak, the mayor told me I better not lie, and he sternly warned me, which was a form of bullying, about lying. Now tonight, Councilwoman Reynolds asks about what does anybody think about all the concerns that were brought up about Peter Primavera, and the mayor says, I know nothing of these allegations. Now that strikes me as an out-and-out lie, because I have sat here in meeting after meeting when people have spoken of these allegations, and I know of email after email that was sent regarding these allegations. So unless the mayor is not listening and not reading emails, that was a lie to say that you know nothing of these allegations. Regarding the turf, I think the term eco-turf is an oxymoron. I think if you look up oxymoron in the dictionary, you would see eco-turf as an example. I sincerely appreciate that the Deputy Mayor, Pam, and Councilwoman Lorraine are remaining steadfast in fighting against the ridiculousness of putting anything artificial over that land. I so hope that SHPO votes this down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And now we'll go to our, oh, excuse me, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Well, you're not as quick as you used to be, because you used to be up there faster.
I got a couple of years on you, my friend.
Not too many.
Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I'd just like to call the council's attention to a matter that was on the agenda tonight. It was 9A10, about Mahwah Water. Interestingly, I just pulled up a news article from the NorthJersey.com, The Record, from June of 2022 that said the Mahwah Water Department advises town of PFAS contamination. So therefore, I question, why would we be buying water from somebody else who also has contaminated water? I don't understand that at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, and I don't think it makes any sense to anybody else in the room for that matter. But so Mahwah also has PFAS. We have PFAS, but yet we've established an emergency connection. We're going to buy water from them, which means that we're going to have to put that water through the same treatment that our water goes through. Maybe it makes sense, but it just seems to me that you would want to buy water from somebody who isn't selling you contaminated water. But I have something else I'd like to talk about. And that is, a couple of weeks ago, Councilwoman Winograd gave some information about the photo contest. And my head spun for a minute, because one of the things I like about Ridgewood the most is the people I meet. But yet it was indicated that when you submitted a photo, nobody could be in the photo. I thought for a few weeks about that comment, and finally I decided I needed to investigate it a little bit further, so I called the village clerk, who I love dearly, and she gave me the straight-up answer. And the straight-up answer was that the reason nobody can be in the photo, or nobody recognizable can be in the photo, is because you needed a photo release, if you did. So I did some further investigation, and I determined that the only reason to have a photo release is if you're going to use the photo commercially. That is, you're going to try to sell something or make some money with it. So I'm just still perplexed as to why a municipal government, which is not in the business of providing any commercial service, would need a photo release to use in a photo that's being used for a non-commercial purpose to promote the village. And the village is not making any money on this. The people are what makes Ridgewood. It doesn't make any sense to me to have these photos out there with nobody in the photo. It's like we're a village that nobody lives in. So maybe we can have the attorney take another look at this and find out, is it absolutely necessary that we have a photo release when we're going to be using the photos for non-commercial purposes? Yes, if the photo was taken in a private backyard in a private setting, it can't be used. But we all know, or at least I know because I do it every day, that there is absolutely no expectation of privacy if a photo is taken in public, whether you are a juvenile or anyone else. If the photo is taken in public, there is no expectation of privacy. If you take a photo of somebody who is walking down Ridgewood Avenue in public, there is no expectation that that photo is private in nature, and a release should not be required if you are not using it for commercial purposes. Therefore, I see no reason that people can't be in these photos that are being submitted for this contest if the photos are taken in public. The people are what makes Ridgewood, not buildings, not trees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boyd. Rohan, you already spoke.
I spoke about, I came right from there
No,
to
no.
speak about
You
my
came to-
frustration with the meeting.
Rohan.
Not my Shedler comment.
Rohan, you have 5 minutes to speak at public comment at the end. You chose to speak about the sound system. Everyone gets one bite at the apple. You get one bite at the apple at the beginning of the meeting, one at the end.
At the end of the meeting, we've always allowed people to come back again if everybody has gotten their time to speak.
No.
But that's
We have.
disappointing, Paul.
No,
as
we
again.
have actually not done that in the almost 2 years that I've sat here. So, and we're not going to tonight.
That's what the ordinance says, Boyd? I think we got to follow the ordinance.
I know that we're under consideration right now to change that, but the ordinance does presently allow for a second time talker.
Go ahead.
Matt, we're in good graces again. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
What was that you said at Dad's night? Brilliant.
Brilliant.
So,
Please state your name and address.
Rohan De Silva, 529 West Avalon River Road, Ridgewood, New Jersey. So I make that a point because I want all of you to understand, again, how frustrating it is not to be able to understand, hear and understand clearly. So there were a few different issues here tonight with what Chris Rudishauser said. One, a whole row of trees were cut down by PSE&G, right on that first line of trees. And while he may have been at the property a couple of times, I walk that property twice a day. I saw them cut down the trees. So, you know, it's alarming sometimes that people in specific positions who are experts make these very non-committal responses to questions from the council. So that's number one. There have been a line of trees right along West Saddle River Road that have been cut down. But I presume if you go along with this plan and you put in cutouts for people to park, those trees would go anyway. Not that I'm a fan of it, but okay. The other thing is, I'd like to know if we can actually enter that building on the Shedler-Zabriskie house, because this gentleman, I don't want to mispronounce your name, but he's entered that house without permission and without acknowledgement, and I want to know whether I can walk in there, because I've never walked in there. And this gentleman has said right here and said he's entered the premises. Did any of you take action about that, against that? Did you ever have a conversation? I'm sorry, what is your name?
Hold it. Now, we're not going to do a dialogue across dialogue.
I don't know I don't want to mispronounce his name. Anyway, okay. So my point is, some people get to do what they want in Ridgewood, some people don't. And it seems that everybody on the east side of 17 don't get to do what they want to. If this person walks up to me or behind me, I'm going to have an issue. I advise him to get away from me right now. It is a threat to me.
Rohan, he's getting in line to speak.
It is a threat to me.
Rohan.
He should not be behind me.
Rohan, he is getting...
I feel threatened.
Rohan.
I feel threatened.
I assure you, nothing's going to happen. No physical altercation will take place. Please continue with your comments.
I want you to understand that I have every right to defend myself if he walks up behind me.
Rohan, please continue with your comments.
Okay. I'm dismayed that you, as a member of that side of the community, don't take our position seriously. And before we bought our house on West Saddle River Road, we owned another house, or we still own another house. The point is, I went to people on the ad hoc committee to ask them what's going to happen. I first went to Chris Rudishauser, in fact, to say, hey, what's happening with the field? Because I don't want to buy a house if there's going to be a big field there. And he said, I don't know, it's up to the ad hoc committee, the council. Okay. So I then went to people on the ad hoc committee. Siobhan's husband was part of that ad hoc committee. Paul Darper was part of the ad hoc committee. There were a number of people. But I was assured at that point that it was going to be a small-sided grass field, a park for children, and the house, and so on. And that's not what we have today. That's not the plan we have today. And it's very disappointing. And I will continue to fight it with everything I have. And I will fight in every way I have, legally. I'm not talking about any other way. But, you know, this is really disappointing. And Pam, please, if you're really concerned about artificial turf, vote no. Make your position a strong one. They still have the votes, but you have plausible deniability. But vote your conscience. If it's really an issue of health, and I agree with the other lady who said, you are doing a disservice to everyone, including the children, especially the children who are on this field. And I fight for your children too, Evan, because I don't want them to be hurt on that field. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan.
Rurik Halaby, 1 Franklin Avenue. Let me give you comfort. I've never threatened anyone. I just wanted to respond to your statement. I walked.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
All comments will be directed to the council.
I appreciate that. Thank
All
you.
people in the audience will please respect the speaker.
Okay, yes, I did walk around the house. When I did, there were no signs that said no trespassing. Secondly, I went up to the workers working in the house and asked their permission. I said, gentlemen, I'd like to see what you're working on. And they said, please come in. Okay? This is called initiative.
Rurik, direct your comments
this is
to the
called
council,
initiative.
please.
And then this is what made me feel as strongly as I have ever felt about the stupidity and the foolishness of what has happened to the house. You can put lipstick on a pig by referring to it as the historic Zabriskie Shedler house. That doesn't make it in any way worth $1 that we have spent on it. But anyway, I did not, if I broke the law, come and arrest me. But I did ask permission of the people working there, and they said, please come on board. And there were no signs that said no trespassing at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Rurik. And before we proceed, Keith, I don't see any problem with anybody if we have a tour of the house.
Through you, Mayor, I can tell you that during my tenure here, the house has been locked. I was taken on a tour maybe my second week by Chris. It was just he and I who walked through the house. The contractor was still active in the house at that time and had their key in order to gain access. Other than that, and the recent visit that was requested by council and that Heather so graciously arranged through the building department, I'm not aware of any other members of the public being in there.
But if members
recently.
of the public wanted to see it, is that an issue for us?
Once the certificate of occupancy is issued by the building department, then we would gladly invite the public.
Terrific.
And in fairness, I had asked earlier in the summer if the Historical Preservation Committee could tour, and that was the response I got, was that there had to be a certificate of occupancy issued before we could let anyone in. With that said, as soon as that certificate is issued, I completely endorse allowing some of the members of some of our residents to go look at the house. They paid for it. They should be able to see it.
Absolutely.
So as soon as it is safe, I would certainly encourage Keith us to make that available and to do tours.
And to Councilman White's earlier point from earlier in the meeting, I think the more people that have access to it and are able to walk through it, it may be beneficial for finding a finalized use for the house moving forward.
So I'd like to say several things here. First of all, let's be clear, nobody should go in the house. I just want to say that. You shouldn't go in the house. It's not safe. Since being on council, in January and February, I went with Lorraine. I, too, have asked for my committees to go, and I've been told there's an indemnification problem. I did yesterday make sort of an HGTV walkthrough tour that I plan on posting on social media once I can get it together. I do want to say this. I've had this conversation with Lorraine. I feel somewhat strongly opening it to the public before it's accessible to the disabled community is something we should think long and hard about. The handicap ramp that we received a grant for faces the interior side, and it's inaccessible to every member of this community, and that is a concern for me. I feel that often these things, everyone, open it up. People are saying, so you can walk through it. We have done a lot of work to make it accessible. We've spent rightful good money, and 1 out of 5 Americans will be disabled at the point in their life, and I feel very strongly that until the parking lot is there and we can make it accessible for all, we should not open the house for physical walkthroughs, because we have to acknowledge that 25% of our community cannot walk. This is part of the failure to develop the park now means we have an asset that we can't access. And that is why when we talk about things like putting in the parking lot and putting in the ramp, we need to find alternative ways to make it accessible. This video's not that great. I wore clunky shoes, and you will hear them in the video. But I think this council, look, I'm one vote, but I feel very strongly that, you can't exclude 25% of the public and open it up to people who can walk and say boo-hoo-hoo to people who have mobility issues. So I fully support people taking a video tour. I would fully support spending professional money to have it visible to everybody, but I don't fully support opening it and icing out our handicapped community. Sorry.
And let's move on. Fretcha.
Fretcha De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. I had another question, and since we have an opportunity to come up here, the maps that were presented tonight don't necessarily, at least for me, give a clear indication of measurements, the size of the fields and the size of the road. It's not very clear. I know that one of the maps that was on the website some time ago, I believe from the 2017 rendition of the plan, had more detail in it, and I really don't understand how we can present to the state without this level of detail. There's more than just, these pictures of the trees. There has to be space between trees. There has to be, I would want to see some of that detail as a resident, and I assume the state will want to see that kind of detail. And so I would ask you to publish that as well. And that'll go with also some of the drainage and all of that stuff that goes with it, because I know that I looked at one of the prior plans with a friend of mine who had that kind of knowledge, and he said, yes, this is a real plan, and you can see how this is measured out. What we're looking at, or what's been presented to the council to the public these last few times, is just a drawing. And I think we need a real plan with real measurements to really understand what's going on. Thanks.
Yes, and to that end, Fretcha, we do need to submit construction drawings. We needed to approve this plan so that our engineering department can draft those. So once they're all available, everyone will see them.
And Petra, when it goes up on the website, the field measurements and some of the tree measurements, you can see them. They're just small. So when the image goes up tomorrow, you'll be able to zoom in and see more additive detail. But they're there.
It's up now.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Anyone else?
The drawing's up now.
Once, twice. Want to make sure. And with that, I'm going to go online. The only one I have online is Alex Finston. So I'm going to take him, and then we'll circle back. Alex, you're up. And you're on mute. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Alex Finston, 150 Brookside. I would just want to thank everyone for their time and certainly thank the diverse viewpoints at the meeting. I just wanted to express my support for the Shedler project and really any project that gives our kids in our community more access to fields and public spaces. To say that I'm a concerned parent would be an understatement at the current state of our fields and recreation facilities. I have 3 small children in town, and I'd say I have experience at many of our fields, many of which are both overused, under-resourced, under-taken care of, which I think is creating many of the problems that we deal with today. I do think that there have been several important viewpoints highlighted with respect to, the turf versus grass argument. But I do think when we think about, environmental concerns, the pesticide and certainly the amount of carbon fuels that go into the air with respect to mowing is one that should be taken into consideration when we think about environmental impact of fields. Many of our turf fields are beautiful, well utilized, and outside of the unfortunate flooding incidents are some of the best facilities that we have in this town. With respect to the fields, I'd say at times my experience is that our fields are embarrassing relative to those of the towns surrounding us. And I'd say I've had several examples of some of the very poor care of our fields in a variety of interactions, whether it be school activities, athletics, or different activities within the community. And I can give you a couple examples. One example, my daughter was in second grade softball this year at Ridge School. At one point, the grass and the weeds were halfway up her leg. Almost embarrassing to tell a second grader that these are the best fields we have for 8 and 9-year-old girls to play softball. Embarrassing. Another example, obviously, we've had some notable issues with orchard fields. Another example, I've had, many of my children utilize the fields at Somerville, oftentimes having more dandelions than actual grass growing in the fields. Another example, Glen School, soccer at Glen School. At times, the grass being so high because for whatever reason it wasn't mowed, that the soccer ball barely moved. Another example, baseball at Upper Hawes or the Glen School, where the infields are so poorly taken care of, other teams don't want to come to Ridgewood to play because it's a hazard to play baseball in those infields. And so I would say any proposal that brings more options, more fields for not only our community and our children to use, I would highly appreciate continued consideration. I appreciate all the efforts of the Village Council. At the very least, I would hope outside of the Shedler project, which I hope we get to see this complex or facility in the near future, that we take a deep look at the amount of money and resources that we're spending into maintaining both fields associated with the school district, but also the fields that are taken care of by the town. Whether it's the town facilities or administration that are taking care of it, or third parties that are responsible for maintaining our fields. I'd say it is an eyesore for the community, and certainly an eyesore relative to the amount of taxes that we spend to maintain these fields. Ridgewood is a wonderful place to raise a family in, and I'm hopeful and thankful for all the time and efforts that folks are spending to making sure that we continue to have, or continue to hopefully have one day in the future, top-notch fields and public spaces that our town, community, and children can use in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Alex. And it has come to my attention that there is another person who wants to speak but has not figured out how to raise their hand on the computer. If I knew how, I would tell them, but we're trying to work this out. This is for the phone number 201-739-2329. So if we can figure out how to inform you to raise your hand. And now you pushed a button, but it wasn't it. You got it. So that phone number now has the opportunity to speak. I don't know what button you pushed. Doesn't look like a mute button. But we can't hear you yet.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Hi, Paul. This is Jane Shinazuka, 825 Norgate Drive.
I'm sorry, your name
Sorry,
again?
this is my first. Jane Shinazuka, 825 Norgate Drive.
Hi, Jane.
Hi. So forgive me because it's my first time trying to do hybrid, so
All
maybe I
good.
was slow. Okay, I just quickly, firstly, I wanted to thank Pam Perrin for being willing to challenge the majority about the very real health decisions concerning the turf. Also including the high cost, because I think it's a little bit concerning that it's still even under consideration when the footbridge has been pushed off to Never Never Land on the budget. There's not even a discussion of that anymore. So Salem Ridge and Hampshire Hills can't even walk there, should it be built at all. While at the same time, the town pushes the Green Amendment and all the other initiatives about being careful of PFAs, the tree canopy, green space, and walking and biking everywhere. So I think it makes us look kind of foolish as a municipality. And also, I don't remember exactly who brought this point up. It might have been Siobhan, and it might be another day's subject. But the League of Women Voters had a very fleshed out proposal for at least 2 viable options with the county, one of which was to be an annex for the county archives. And we also had $90,000 anonymous donation, and that council rejected that out of hand, would not even hear it. So that subject is absolutely not fully represented. So anyway, this brings me to the separate but related issue of that footbridge itself. It went from, I think there was police tape on it, to plywood, and now there's a permanent metal traffic sign that says, please pardon our appearance, or something like that, which clearly is going to stay there forever because it's not even on your radar. No other neighborhood in Ridgewood would be treated this way, nor would they put up with it. Somehow we over here are just, I don't know, it's like we're assumed we're this just marginalized group that that people assume are not going to fight back. And it goes far beyond just that issue, because the house right next door to me just sold for $1.64 million. And 2 homes on East Saddle River Road are on the MLS right now for at or around $1 million or $1.1 million each. How is it fair for them or the town to let that happen and have that monstrosity of, it looks like a redevelopment zone on the block as they're trying to sell really valuable property? It's outrageous. And I don't like to be combative, and I'm willing to listen to all kinds of compromises, as I have, because I've followed this issue, both of these issues, from the beginning. But I hope that you think twice and think about the people that live over there. This is not some low-rent area that people forget about or don't defend. Our homes are worth as much as everyone else's. I have an acre .2 over here that if I wanted to sell would probably go for a lot of money. And if somebody came as an appointment with a realtor to look at it, they'd have to pass that footbridge with cheap plywood and a sign like that. It's just, I just can't believe it's there in this town. And frankly, if I have just a minute left, I'd like to say, as a theoretical exercise, that if that money that was used to buy Shedler all the time ago is to be considered for the good of the town, and you take a holistic look at the town, why is the idea of a passive park simply off the table? I know there are oral obligations from generations of councils back to RBA and all that, but you know, why isn't it good enough to have a passive park that could look nice and have many trees and protect that valuable area from all the ecological and physical dangers that Route 17 poses?
Jane, your time is up. Thank you so much.
All right.
Anyone else? And with that, I'm going to close public comment, and I'm going to thank all the residents who came, who called in on this topic that is such a hot button, because virtually every word tonight was impassioned and respectful, and I appreciate that. And for those who think that their voices aren't being heard, we hear everyone. But there are competing issues. There are people on both sides of this issue. So I just want you to know that. I hope that you believe me. And with that...
Could I say
yes.
just a couple things? So, one, I just want everyone... People said they were unsure as to why the project stalled. When we purchased it in 2009, it was right during the economic collapse, which is why plans didn't move forward. Two, with respect to the photo contest, the committee, we understand the point about public right-of-ways and people and pictures, but the committee, after some thoughtful discussion, decided to go not with people for many reasons. One, people can move and that makes our content not relevant. And two, we have had some objections from parents. So the committee decided it. There's no other reason other than it would be hard to maintain our content if we allowed visibly recognized people. We did have a good discussion amongst us. And we also worked with legal. When people do submit the photos, we have a way to get back to each individual. I also just wanted to correct two things. I don't believe the League of Women Voters ever opined on a future use. I know there was discussion, and at no point have I seen any donation from a third party come in. So those are just things that I wanted to answer.
And Mayor, if I may, very quickly, just to Mr. Loving's point, the agreement with MAWA has been in place for some time now. It is approved by the Department of Environmental Protection and is required as an emergency connection. The agreement that is being considered by Council tonight under the work session and will be looked at for formal approval next week is simply the document that backs up the agreement that has been in place for some time. Thank you, Mayor.
I would also add, it's never been used.
Correct.
And it's also in place in case of fire emergencies and other things where, again, it's only for an emergency. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.